Welcome to Whisperer of Madness. If you're enjoying the story, consider liking the video and subscribing. It really helps grow the channel and this community. Translator, Atlas Studios editor. Atlas Studios, if one were to travel about 150 kilometers toward the north from this town, they would arrive at the boundaries of the North Continent's Miasma Chi. At the extreme end, the region was the training ground for disciples of the immortal Du sect, the Chaos Treasure Forest. Outside the Miasma Chi, there was a bare desert mountain. It was a stark contrast to the unending blackness of the jungle covered in Miasma Chi. This contrast also drew an obvious border between the two regions. As they got closer to the forest covered in Miasma Chi, Jiu seemed to be a whole other person. Her eyes were filled with caution and wariness, as her immortal senses inspected the area within tens of kilometers from them. Every gust of wind and movement of the grass was checked. She led the group to fly at a low altitude. Then, she used a good amount of immortal power to conjure a white cloud. The huge wine gourd shrunk to about 3 feet, and she hung it on her back. The mouth of the wine gourd continued to glow light blue. It looked like it was ready to fly out and spit at people at any moment. At last, when they reached the Miasma Chi-covered forest border, Jiu got off the white cloud, turned around, and addressed the 5 disciples. According to the rules, each expedition should last 20 days. The timer starts from the moment you enter the Chaos Treasure Forest. If you come out on your own, any time before the end of these 20 days, your expedition will be counted as a failure. You will then return to endure the punishment. Jiu blinked, her tone suddenly easing. Actually, the punishment is as simple as a deduction of your monthly allowance or something. You won't get seriously hurt. If you run into danger, survival is most important. If you find it too tiring, come out at once. Don't force yourself to stay in there. I will wait for all of you here. Since this expedition is meant to push you beyond your limit, I cannot follow behind you all the time. I also cannot become your personal bodyguard. The hunk will stay here as well. You will wait for her here. Yuan Ling cupped his hands and made a request. I came on orders to protect Her Highness, the 6th princess. Immortal Elder, please allow me. Jiu calmly interrupted. Do you want to stay here on your own or be tied here by me? Xianxia spoke up from the side. General Yuan, please stay outside. Follow Aunt Master Jiu's instructions. She seemed faintly imposing as well. It was obvious that she had given countless orders growing up. Yuan Ling answered in a low voice, This general receives your orders. Then he frowned and turned to Yuan Qing. Yuan Qing immediately said, General Yuan, do not worry. I will protect junior sister Xianxia even if it costs me my life. Xianxia gave no response whatsoever. Instead, she maintained her icy cold expression, which she put on daily. On the other hand, Li Changshou, who had been standing behind Jiu the entire time, turned to study Yuan Qing and Yuan Ling. Indeed, there is something fishy going on with these two. Jiu cleared her throat and continued, I will give you all 2 warnings. First, help each other out when you get inside. Remember that you are from the same sect. Take care to avoid moving on your own. Yuan Qing, Xianxia, both of you are of higher cultivation levels. If you have extra energy, look out for the others. Yuan Qing smiled and answered, Rest assured, Aunt Master. Xianxia also answered, Your disciple receives your orders. Immortal Jiu added, Second, do not push your luck. Do not risk your lives to look for herbs. Ferocious beasts would normally guard the most valuable herbs. These ferocious beasts are not stupid, and you are the greatest nourishment they would get. At that point, Jiu suddenly made a move. Her left hand shot out as quickly as an illusion as she gently pinched Xianxia's face. Especially fine, tender, premium-grade meat like yours. Aunt Master, please maintain your dignity, said Xianxia, frowning. Jiu sniggered by the side. Whoa, so smooth. I really envy you, natural beauties. Your Aunt Master doesn't have what it takes. My skin is so dry. I also don't have anyone behind me shouting, Junior Sister Jiu, Junior Sister Jiu all day. While joking, Jiu retrieved 5 crescent-shaped jade stones. She tossed one into each of the 5 disciples' hands. Here, this is a communication jade in case you need any help. If you run into any trouble, just break it. Your Aunt Master will be able to sense it, and I will go and help you at once. Using the communication jade means that you give up on your expedition. When you get back, they will deduct your monthly allowance. It's no big deal. Go, be careful, don't die in there. The 5 disciples kept their communication jades, cupping their hands and bowing to immortal Jiu one by one. Then, they stuck on their respective miasma-repelling talismans. With Li Changshou and Yuan Qing at the front of the group, they headed into the miasma-chi-covered forest. Li Changshou remained half a step behind them because he first stuck the miasma-repelling talisman on his Dao robe. Then, he swiftly lifted up the inner layer of his robe and stuck another talisman on his inner thigh. Finally, he stuck a third talisman at the back of his collar on his inner shirt. This would cover all bases. There would be no need for him to worry that the talismans would fall off on their own. He would just have to take care to change them every few days. He heard the sound of the wind as a pair of footsteps quickly traveled towards him. Li Changshou looked disheveled as he took 2 steps forward, easily dodging the figure running towards him. Jiu chided him in frustration. "You're still not going. Remember to follow them closely. You are only in the 9th stage of soul formation. You're such a careful person. What are you doing in such a rotten place? Take care, Ant Master." Li Changshou turned and cupped his hands, the corners of his lips twitching slightly. He sent a voice transmission to Immortal Jiu at the same time. Then, he walked away briskly, trailing at the back of the group of 5. The miasma chi engulfed them. Immediately, the miasma-repelling talismans of the 4 people in front emitted a soft glow. A thin, transparent protective layer appeared around each of their bodies. Li Changshou's situation was more amazing. 3 layers were covering his body so that even breathing felt difficult. However, the air that he tried hard to breathe in felt especially fresh. Wang Jai cleared his throat and said, "Senior brother Changshou can come with me later on. I'm just here to try my luck. I'm not looking for any herbs in particular. Junior brother Yuan Qing and the others need not be burdened." "Great." Li Changshou smiled at Wang Jai knowingly, while the latter raised his eyebrows in response. A kind of chemistry had developed between the two. This was probably chemistry among light bulbs. While moving around within the North Continent, those who had not yet ascended to immortality had to avoid flying. 3 feet above the ground, the miasma chi would feel extremely thick. What's more, with so many poisonous insects and ferocious beasts around, it would be much safer for them to remain on the ground. At that moment, there was only one path to take. What looked like burnt, black wood lined that pathway. Most of the branches there did not have leaves on them. However, another type of life seemed to flow within them. As the 5 of them walked down the path, they tried to expand their spiritual awareness as much as possible. From time to time, they would spot 1 or 2 poisonous beasts, hiding in the darkness and watching the invaders coldly. There seemed to be no daylight in the forest, and danger lurked in every corner. The Chaos Treasure Forest contained several types of treasures and tens of different types of herbs. However, since they were at the extreme end of the forest, where the risks were the lowest, 70 to 80% of the herbs had already been taken away by human cultivators and demons. It was undoubtedly going to be quite difficult for the 5 to find the spiritual herbs they wanted. What's more, the herb that Li Changshou was looking for was not within the Chaos Treasure Forest. It was located deeper into the region. As they walked, Li Changshou retrieved a map made of sheepskin, which was as big as his palm. He looked at the different markings he had made on the map and confirmed the direction he had to travel in later on. First, he had to look for a good reason to leave the group. Most importantly, he had to ensure that Ant Master Jiu, who was stealthily following them in the sky, would not step out to stop him. After about an hour, the forest became even darker. The stench of something rotting filled the air. Groups of insects were crying out, and the predators hidden in the darkness kept their eyes on the 5 living and breathing beings, waiting for the opportunity to pounce. In the swamp scattered with bones, there were seductive but poisonous flowers and fruits seated on high trees, and demonic spiders laughing cruelly. The few disciples from the Immortal Dew sect were considered skillful, daring people. As time went by, they walked quicker and grew accustomed to their surroundings. Li Changshou followed closely behind the 4 of them. At that moment, he was still far from the place where he had to change direction. Thus, he felt no urgency to leave the group. All of a sudden, they heard the stifling roar of a beast. The poisonous insect's crying was suddenly amplified, as a ferocious and fiendish energy aura surged towards them. A poisonous beast could no longer resist. It was going to attack them. Li Changshou, who was right in front of the group, immediately raised her hand to stop everyone from moving forward. The huge sword on her back began to tremble slightly. Yuan Qing gently shook his right hand, and a green immortal sword flew into his palm. He looked especially threatening, ready to attack at any moment. Just as the 4 people in front of him turned their attention to the black figure rushing out of the forest on their front left, Li Changshou turned to the right. He took 1 step forward, stood behind Wang Jai and said, "Be careful on the right." The moment Li Changshou finished speaking, a 10 feet tall black figure jumped out from their front left. This was a black-skinned leopard which had 2 wings growing out of its back. Its front claws flashed black and green. The moment it appeared, it jumped towards the 4 of them at once. Yuan Qing shouted in a low voice, "Evil beast, you're courting death." A gentle breeze blew past Xianxia as he rushed past her. An 8-inch beam of green light shot out of the edge of the 3-foot sword. His footwork released many remnant images underneath his feet. Out of the sword light emerged an elongated Z. Just as the black leopard raised its claws, its black blood shot towards the sky. At once, its body was cut into multiple different pieces. At that moment, 2 black figures jumped out from the front right side of the forest and headed straight for Liu Yanner and Xianxia. "Let me," shouted Wang Jai, rushing to Liu Yanner's side. Flames now surrounded both of his hands, and he waved them at the 2 black leopards, attempting to force them back. However, before his flames exploded, a fiery red figure brushed past him. The sword that she hadn't unsheathed before cut through the air. As the sword brushed past them, the 2 black leopards immediately flew backward, like 2 huge sandbags. It was just a single wave of the sword. There was no follow-up move. Yet the 2 black leopards were already high up in the sky. 2 fiery red lotus flowers appeared in the leopards' bodies. They exploded, blowing the bodies into pieces. The flames completely swallowed the remains and black blood. In the blink of an eye, nothing remained of the 2 black leopards. Wang Jai smiled awkwardly, retracting the balls of flames in his hands and stepping backward. Li Changshou's eyes brightened. This Xianxia has mastered the 9 Lotus Li fire skill. The 3 black leopards had been killed in the blink of an eye. The number of eyes that were fixed on these 5 disciples from within the darkness halved. The 5 of them took their places once again and got on their way. Xianxia and Yuan Qing began to display simple footwork, but the 3 people behind them could keep up easily. That was until a fork appeared in the path. Then, the group came to a stop at the same time. Xianxia turned around and said, "Senior brother, senior sister, I am going in this direction to look for the fire-loathing enlightenment herb. It was recorded in our sect that people have spotted this herb in this direction. Please take care of yourselves. Don't go too far in." Liu Yanner also said that she was searching for a herb and was headed in the other direction. The group began to split up. Naturally, Yuan Qing was going to stick with Xianxia. He had come specially to help and protect her. Wang Jai was there to experience the outside world. At the same time, he agreed to help Liu Yanner look for the herb she wanted. Thus, the 4 of them all turned to Li Changshou. "I'm going this way. I have to separate from all of you now," said Li Changshou while pointing in a completely different direction. Xianxia asked, "Senior brother Changshou, what herb are you looking for?" Li Changshou answered seriously, "It's not convenient for me to say. However, don't worry about me. Take care." Yuan Qing tried to persuade him. "Senior brother Changshou, why not go with senior sister Yanner?" Before Yuan Qing could finish speaking, Li Changshou took 1 step towards the path he chose. He employed simple footwork and floated away, his hair not even dancing in the wind. Still, very quickly, he disappeared around the corner into the forest ahead. "Really, he's taking our good intentions for granted," Liu Yanner muttered irritably. Yuan Qing and Wang Jai shook their heads as well. They guessed that Li Changshou was just being proud, and he wanted to prove himself too badly. Xianxia, on the other hand, seemed to have something on her mind. She turned around and began walking on the path she selected. Her back view, coupled with the sword on her back, looked more delicate than before. Translator, Atlas Studios editor. Atlas Studios, this Li Changshou, he could have just followed a pair. Why did he have to go on a 3rd path? Among the clouds above the Chaos Treasure Forest, Jiu was seated atop a gray cloud. She smacked her knee in frustration and then picked up a wine gourd to take a huge gulp. She wanted to resolve the worry in her heart. She did not expect so many disciples to come to the North Continent during this priming meet. 4 of them were even among the most treasured immortal seedlings in the sect. She could not allow anything to happen to them. Now, 5 of them were being so bold as to split into 3 groups. Jiu began to feel pressured. They are all really young cows that do not fear tigers, youths who know no fear. Yet, Jiu recalled what she was like when she was still a young disciple. Wasn't she just as ambitious as they were? Juju picked up her wine gourd and removed the stopper. Then she paused and replaced it. Forget it. I'll wait for 20 days. Due to the miasma chi, perfected Juju's immortal senses could not expand too far. The good thing was that they were in the outer region of the North Continent. The beasts there were not that skillful. Moreover, few human cultivators or demons would remain in these outer regions. Instead, most of them would travel deeper. After pondering for a moment, Juju turned to look at Yuan Ling, who was standing on a gray cloud behind her. She wanted to ask him to follow Xianxia and Yuan Qing so that she could relieve some stress. However, just before she said it out loud, Juju blinked. "Aunt Master Ju, this person has come for unknown reasons and is slightly suspicious. Don't trust him easily." She recalled the voice transmission that Li Changshou had sent to her when she had been chasing him away. Juju did not take Li Changshou's word for it. After all, the hunk looked like he would collapse with a single blow from her. However, for some reason, Juju really hesitated. "Forget it. The 5 of them have not wandered outside my immortal awareness for now. I don't need to panic." She steered the gray cloud forward and then turned around to say, "Hunk, follow me closely." "Rest assured, exalted immortal," replied Yuan Ling, cupping his hands. He maintained a 3-foot distance between them as he followed behind Juju. The group chose 3 different paths. Naturally, the further they walked, the further apart they became. After pondering about it for a while, Juju decided to follow behind Wang Jai and Liu Yanner temporarily. As for Yuan Qing and Yaoqing Xuanya, she was slightly more relieved. As for Li Changshou, Juju was worried, but she could not just let the pairs wander off on their own while she protected the man who went solo. This would make it too obvious that she was being biased. Juju was prepared to follow behind all 3 groups in turn. At the very most, she would ensure that she spent equal time following and protecting each of them. The priming meet rules were that the immortals only had to send the disciples to the destination and allow them to train inside. There was no need for them to bother about anything else. As the saying went, whether one survived or not would be up to fate. The disciples would be able to grow much faster in such dangerous circumstances. However, pushing them into such dangerous circumstances came with the risk of losing them or injuring them. According to Juju's immortal senses, Yaoqing Xuanya and Yuan Qing were advancing very quickly towards the region that they wanted to reach. The pool, where the fire-loathing enlightenment herbs grew, was considered one of the safest places within the Chaos Treasure Forest. Those 2 did not dare to fly. However, they were advancing quite quickly. They were not talking much and were running one in front of the other. From time to time, poisonous beasts would attempt to attack them, but they would deal with them easily. Indeed, the Heaven-Breaking Peak's disciples are the most reliable. Juju looked further down and could see Wang Jai and Liu Yanner's situation. Both of them were talking as they walked. It looked like they were taking at least a slight interest in each other. Although poisonous insects and beasts often tried to attack them, they dealt with them accordingly. Their skills were quite commendable. "Nothing huge is happening, but why do I feel so oddly unsatisfied?" Juju pursed her lips, wanting to observe Li Changshou's situation. She focused her immortal senses and discovered that he was missing. Had he been torn into pieces by poisonous beasts so quickly, or had he been swallowed whole? Juju frowned and quickly intensified the search using her immortal senses. That was not right. He was using a technique to shield himself from her immortal senses. She could still sense the brat's aura in the north, and he was also moving at top speed. He was moving at least double the speed of Yaoqing Xuanya and Yuan Qing. "Brat, you're a soul formation cultivator in the 9th stage, yet you are flying towards the deeper regions of the Chaos Treasure Forest. Are you rushing to die?" Juju tilted her chin upward and groaned wordlessly, causing her already torn top to shake violently. She glanced at Wang Jai and Liu Yanner, who were currently studying a poisonous flower. Then, she pointed forward with her left hand and sped up to chase Li Changshou. She would catch this fellow and throw him to Wang Jai to be taken care of. A moment later, Juju finally caught up with Li Changshou and traveled the same way he was advancing. However, when she looked down to study him, she frowned even more deeply. That brat seemed to be using a track-concealing talisman to hide his aura. That would allow him to avoid detection from ferocious beasts far away. What's more, Li Changshou was not risking flying. Instead, he was using his brilliant dragon swimming across Cloud's footwork and causing afterimages to form underneath his feet. This cultivator in the 9th stage of soul formation was at peak performance. That's not right. The herb tripod hanging from this fella's waist. Juju scrunched up her nose after smelling a strange odor. She looked down to study it for a while, and then immediately looked shocked. It's the saliva of the red yang poisonous dragon. Red yang poisonous dragons lived in the North Sea. They loved eating demons, poisonous beasts, and ordinary living beings. However, they were too violent and conducted massacres everywhere. As a result, the already lacking luck of the dragon race had run out. Tens of thousands of years ago, the dragon race had purged them. The saliva of red yang poisonous dragons is not considered a rare treasure, but it's still quite expensive. Where did this brat Li Changshou get it? With this hanging on his belt, ordinary poisonous beasts and insects would not dare to go near him. It was no wonder that he was advancing so fearlessly. Juju's eyebrows twitched as she mumbled. This fellow was quite well prepared. It looks like he was really determined to find that herb. What herb is he looking for? Yuan Ling's rough voice sounded behind her. Immortal Elder, why don't you ask him? There's no need. He would become a good-for-nothing even after ascending to immortality if he knew that he's training under the protection of an immortal. Juju stretched her body, then turned to face Yuan Ling, who was standing behind her. Let's go. We'll go and see how the royalty from your house is doing. Don't say that this Aunt Master is biased behind my back. Yuan Ling immediately nodded in response, looking very eager. He played the role of a loyal guard perfectly. However, when Juju turned to fly away, Yuan Ling retrieved a black beetle from his thigh and threw it into the gray cloud underneath him. This move was very subtle, and it was only done when Juju turned her immortal awareness to focus on the other 4 disciples. Even though Juju's cultivation level was far higher than Yuan Ling's, she did not notice that subtle movement. After the 2 of them flew away, the beetle continued to fly with the gray cloud, following Li Changshou closely. Hey! Li Changshou looked up into the sky. While he was speeding along, he noticed something out of the ordinary. It was almost like there were a pair of eyes in the sky, keeping watch on him. However, on closer inspection, he could not find anything strange. Aunt Master. Perhaps not. The gaze feels malicious. Li Changshou lived according to the principle of being safe rather than sorry. He stopped and conjured a seal with both his hands. He muttered several words under his breath, and thin waves began to appear in the gray ground in front of him. As he advanced forward, his body quickly got sucked into the ground. At once, he disappeared. Li Changshou used one of the escape techniques of the 5 elements, Earth Escape. A moment later, Li Changshou's figure appeared among the bushes 25 kilometers ahead. Around him, there were countless poisonous insects and a few poisonous beasts running in all directions. The feeling of being watched had indeed disappeared. Li Changshou quickly found his bearings, lowered his head, and continued sprinting forward. At the same time, he retrieved 2 talismans from inside his sleeve, sticking one on each thigh. This helped him to speed up a fraction more. Soul Movement 1000-mile talisman. It was considered quite an average talisman, which could increase the speed of the user's movement. It was normally only used by cultivators in the beginning phases of the Qi refinement realm. Li Changshou had already guessed that since there were 5 of them on this journey, they would most likely meet extraordinary circumstances. The Chaos Treasure Forest was extremely dangerous, but they were on the extreme outer regions of the North Continent. Cultivators in the Void Return Realm would easily be able to deal with the dangers as long as they were cautious. That meant the Chaos Treasure Forest's dangers were not particularly applicable. However, the external factors, namely Yuan Ling, whom they had met halfway, Yuan Qing, who looked warm and kind all the time, as well as Xianxia, who looked cold on the outside, but was devoid of shrewdness on the inside, complicated the whole situation. Most importantly, Her Highness Xianxia was a royal princess from the secular world. Li Changshou had his personal theory and firmly believed that there was some kind of story to be unraveled in there. The person that had been planning all of these behind the scenes must have thought that there were no holes in his plan. However, the guard of royalty in the secular world had suddenly appeared out of nowhere, instead of going to the immortal sect directly to explain the situation and resolve the situation by stopping Xianxia from going out. This was not logical. Forget it! This has nothing to do with me. As Li Changshou ran, he retrieved his simple map and studied it again. There was a hint of frustration in his eyes. If he had a choice, Li Changshou would choose not to come to such a dangerous place. This went completely against his life principle, to stay on the mountain until he died of old age. However, he had to do it for his master. Keep purity a priority and remain unaffected by everything else. Then it would be easy to avoid all types of evil, Li Changshou said to himself, perking himself up. Then he continued to speed through the black forest filled with poisonous obstacles. A moment later, he felt like he was being watched once again. He frowned and cursed in his heart how troublesome this was. This time, Li Changshou did not expose more of his escape techniques. Instead, he checked the fighting equipment in his storage Dharma treasures. His spiritual awareness also began searching for a place to hide. Although he was cautious, Li Changshou was not a coward. There was a difference between both of these things. A long period followed. Li Changshou continued to have this feeling of being watched, but he did not find anyone hiding, nor did anyone try to assassinate him. He remained on high alert for 2 whole days and nights, displaying his earth escape technique several more times. The feeling of being watched did not go away. Li Changshou tried to analyze his current position. Of course, he was already deep inside the Chaos Treasure Forest. He must have already traveled outside of the limits of Ant Master Jiu Jiu's immortal awareness. He did not stop moving, but he did not feel exhausted. The tough training that he had been through for several years prior was proving to have outstanding effects. All of a sudden, Li Changshou sensed murderous intent. Li Changshou's spiritual awareness did not detect any threat. It was obvious that the other party had the means to avoid his spiritual awareness. He scanned the source of the murderous intent, on his left, in the darkness of the forest. Li Changshou continued to advance, but the tips of his left fingers were already moving subtly, creating thin ropes, which resembled spiderwebs, and spreading them out. His right hand began summoning a gentle breeze, undetected. It was the best way of investigating, the spiderweb of strong pupil 3-headed spiders. Shortly after, a blurry image appeared in Li Changshou's heart. Translator, Atlas Studios editor. Atlas Studios. A figure rushed forward, dressed in a gray hemp garment and wearing a conical bamboo hat on his head. He was traveling so fast that his figure seemed to twist and turn. Around him, a light gray layer of light appeared. The web of strong pupil 3-headed spiders could only detect this aura. According to Li Changshou's observation, this person was quite strong. There was a long sword hanging from his waist, which was probably a top-notch killer weapon. A violent aura engulfed the man. Li Changshou guessed that he was used to licking the blood off the tip of his sword. He sucked in a deep breath and adjusted his aura. Then his speed began to increase. A moment later, the attacker sped up as well. What's more, he adjusted the angle at which he was advancing. Li Changshou confirmed that he was the target for sure. The other party was probably in the 6th or 7th stage of void return. However, he could have been hiding his true cultivation level. On second thought, Li Changshou predicted that the man was approximately in the 6th stage of Dao requital. This was because the person was using a movement technique to catch up to Li Changshou, instead of flying, which was much more efficient. There was a low chance that the person was an immortal. Li Changshou frowned. He had indeed been sucked into a strange situation. How should he deal with this? Li Changshou's first reaction was to use his escape techniques, but he quickly realized that he had been under surveillance for the past 2 days. This meant that his follower had ways to track him down. If he escaped this time, and the other party remained relentless in attacking him, Li Changshou would be in even greater danger. 0.5 kilometers in front of Li Changshou was a huge plain, filled with poisonous herbs and devoid of trees. Li Changshou groaned softly in his heart. His right hand grabbed onto 2 small paper dolls, as the aura in his body gathered in that palm. The 5 elements take turns. There is huge value in metamorphosis. In muddiness, there are no obstacles. The earth remains the center. Creases and folds appeared in the gray-white ground in front of him. Once again, Li Changshou employed earth escape. However, before his body made it underground, his right hand turned into a burst of light. The man chasing Li Changshou frowned. He tutted and felt the fast-traveling aura underground. Once again, he jumped away and sped up, chasing after him as fast as he could. A moment later, Li Changshou appeared among poisonous herbs. He shook the poisonous dirt off his body, frightening off a few poisonous insects at the same time. Then, he raised his hand and changed a few of his miasma-repelling talismans. Immediately after, he had to resume sprinting once again. At that moment, he heard the hiss of a sword beside him. A cold light beam proved to be 30% quicker than the hissing. It was headed right for Li Changshou's neck. Li Changshou turned around at once, but he had no time to react at all. The thin and long Dharma sword hit him in the neck, causing his head to fly backward. There was a wisp of smoke, gently twisting around. The cultivator, who had on the conical bamboo hat and was dressed in gray, appeared behind Li Changshou. The veil in front of his bamboo hat floated upwards, revealing a cold smile on his lips. He is indeed in the soul formation realm, without any effort at all, you. He stopped mid-sentence, looking down suddenly at his own legs. Li Changshou, who had just been beheaded, was now holding onto this man's ankles. The assassin reacted swiftly. At once he jumped backward. Then his vision became blurry. It was almost as if all of the energy had been sucked out of his body. His dharmic powers and aura became extremely idle. It felt impossible to activate them. At that moment, the assassin looked closely at the corpse's belt, which was still hanging onto his ankles. There was an opened pot. He had fallen for his trick. The man tried his hardest to bite his tongue so that he could sober up. Yet, he could not even muster up enough energy to bite his tongue. His vision was becoming blurry. It was a self-created incapacitating agent, the soft, immortal disperser. At that moment, a beam of light flew on top of the assassin's head and hovered there. It was a strange-looking paper umbrella, embedded with spirit stones of various colors. The paper umbrella turned slowly. The spirit stones embedded in it flew out in all directions. An isolation array formation measuring 150 feet in diameter suddenly appeared, with the umbrella as its base. The area that it covered was isolated entirely from the rest of the world. It was a self-made Dharma treasure, the heaven-changing treasure umbrella. Li Changshou slowly emerged from the ground with his right hand raised. The three paper dolls expanded in the wind. Two crushing sounds were heard as they took on Li Changshou's form and charged forward. That was a Dao sect technique, the man-forming paper cutouts. The paper dolls had not even reached the assassin when Li Changshou held out a short, bronze crossbow in his left hand. Without any hesitation, he pulled the trigger of the crossbow and caused a wooden arrow to shoot out, aiming straight for the area between the assassin's eyebrows. The bamboo hat flew upwards, revealing a skinny, sinister face. The arrow pierced through the assassin's forehead, causing the light in his eyes to slowly dissipate. You! The assassin let out one last furious roar, but it sounded powerless. His mouth remained open until the three paper dolls reached him. Paper doll 1 produced 3 long nails, which pierced the assassin in his 3 dantian points, top, middle, and bottom. This locked his 3 immortal souls and fixed his 7 mortal forms. Paper doll 2 used both of its hands to conjure a seal. It also opened its mouth, producing pure white flames, which engulfed the assassin's body. These flames instantly ignited the assassin's flesh. Like a snowman, it turned into liquid and dissipated. That fellow did not even have the energy to cry out in pain. Paper doll 3 kept muttering words under its breath. It was using a curse that would subdue souls and extinguish demons. Waves appeared in front of the doll, causing the shadow, which appeared in the white flames, to disappear. At that moment, the assassin's soul was completely destroyed. All that was left was a handful of remains that were still being consumed by the white flames. Li Changshou still could not relax. He tossed out a pearl as big as his thumb. The pearl spun around, absorbing light green wisps of light. Not a single bit of the assassin's soul remained. Li Changshou carried his bronze crossbow and walked forward. Carefully, he picked up the pearl. The white flames had already been extinguished. Only black ashes, half of a sword, and a small ring remained on the ground. The 3 paper dolls sat on the ground cross-legged. At once, they started to chant sutras. The first paper doll recited the Tao sect's Salvation Sutra. The second recited the Western School's legendary Rebirth Curse, and the third recited the Tao sect's Blessing Destruction Curse. Li Changshou picked up the jade and stone ring and held it in the palm of his hand. He felt no urge to break the restrictions on the ring. Instead, he used his dharmic powers to form layers around the ring, before tossing it into the storage Dharma artifact marked Heaven Number 4. After that, he looked at his pearl, a look of understanding appearing on his face. He made a detour around the 3 paper dolls and then employed Earth Escape again. When the 3 paper dolls finished chanting their respective sutras, little waves began to appear in the ground. Li Changshou's arms danced around, causing the ashes left behind by the assassin to be scattered by the wind. The 3 paper dolls sprung up into the sky as well, and then turned into 3 palm-sized paper cutouts before flying back into Li Changshou's sleeves. The umbrella retracted itself, and the spirit stones flew back where they belonged. At the same time, the huge array disappeared. Li Changshou picked up the sword and pointed it, causing a gust of sword aura to fly out. It pierced through the poisonous fog above and directly hit a black beetle, reducing it to dust. The entire movement was smooth. It was almost as if Li Changshou had practiced this countless times before. He turned around and surveyed the surroundings, which had already reverted to its original state. Then, he turned to the beheaded paper doll and lightly touched it. The paper doll caught fire, leaving behind no traces of what happened. Li Changshou took 1 step forward and got sucked into the ground. Just like that, he disappeared. AI, to refine a paper doll took a lot of effort as well. However, it was worth it, given that he had obtained that fellow's family background in exchange. Li Changshou searched the remnant souls in the pearl and found many memories inside. Through those memories, he learned the assassin's motive and the plan behind this entire journey. The assassin that had tried to kill him was nicknamed Assassin Turtledove. He was in the 2nd stage of Dao requital. He was a cultivator, hired by someone with spirit stones to go there and do his dirty work. The person had tried to kill Li Changshou in order to obtain the communications talisman from him. He had wanted to use that communications talisman to lure the tiger away from its cave. He had wanted to lure Ant Master Jiu Jiu there. Once Ant Master Jiu Jiu appeared, Assassin Turtledove would attack Liu Yanner and Wang Jai. He would then use them as bait to lure Ant Master Jiu Jiu and trap her in an array formation. After that, they could focus on their real target, the 6th princess of whatever country, Xianxia. However, Assassin Turtledove did not want to kill Xianxia. This entire plan was meant to achieve a more despicable objective. According to the pieces of Assassin Turtledove's memory, Li Changshou guessed that the mastermind behind this entire plan was either the junior brother from his sect, Yuan Qing, or a certain powerful person behind Yuan Qing. The corners of Li Changshou's mouth twitched. In his heart, he cursed. Indeed, one cannot only judge others based on their looks. Warm, kind men are mostly fake. Yet, this had nothing to do with Li Changshou. The other party was spending so much effort just to lure Ant Master Jiu Jiu into an array formation and trap her. It was obvious that this person did not dare to fight Ant Master Jiu Jiu head-on. That meant that Li Changshou did not need to worry about the safety of a certain perfected immortal. After a gentle breeze, the poisonous miasma was back. Peace was restored to the forest. The poisonous herbs swayed gently in the wind. Apart from a bunch of poisonous herbs burnt to a crisp, nothing else was left behind. Nobody would have thought that just a second ago, a fatal battle had taken place there. A moment later, all that would be heard there would be the gentle breeze, sounding like an endless, melodic groan. I killed you in just 10 minutes, and I even scattered your ashes. On the coast of the East Ocean, on a certain beach, hundreds of disciples were fighting the endless wave of prawn demons emerging from the sea. In one corner of the war zone, a few young cultivators in the Qi refinement realm hid behind some reefs. They kept muttering curses to activate their Dharma artifacts, attempting to help the senior brothers and sisters fighting in front of them. However, their eyes could not leave a certain figure fighting a short distance away from them. Lan Ling held a porcelain bottle in her hands, gently pouring out some powder. She breathed some spiritual energy onto the piles of powder, scattering them outwards onto tens of oncoming prawn demons at once. The prawn demons were not that intelligent, to begin with. Once the dust hit them, their legs turned to jelly. Then, they lay on the ground with froth coming out their mouths, and their eyes darting around rapidly. Lan Ling then took out her short sword and floated forward. One by one, she finished them off. Lan Ling was extremely accurate as she pierced the demon's soul of each prawn demon powerfully with a single move. Soon, she turned around and floated back to her original position, waiting for the next wave of demons to come. The entire time, Lan Ling remained oblivious that she had become the center of many other disciples' attention. The poisonous powder that senior brother refined for me is so useful. I wonder if senior brother is safe. The North Continent is so dangerous. It is said that even a single insect could kill an immortal. AI, stinking senior brother always asks others to play it safe while he takes risks. He didn't even bring his intelligent and brave junior sister along. The more Lan Ling thought about it, the angrier she became. Suddenly, a cold shadow appeared in front of her. "Junior sister Ling, be careful. Quickly, dodge." All of a sudden, she heard several anxious shouts by her ear. Lan Ling looked up instinctively and saw 7 or 8 prawn demons right in front of her. More than 10 claws were waving in front of her face, ready to strike. There were also various pits in the ground. The prawn demons were emerging from underground. At that intense moment, Lan Ling softly cried out. She retrieved another porcelain bottle from inside her sleeves and threw it out. Her senior brother's hoarse voice sounded in her mind. "If you find yourself in an emergency, or if you're surrounded by enemies, throw this bottle." Bang! The porcelain bottle exploded among the prawn demons, and green smoke emerged from the bottle, engulfing the prawn demons at once. In the next moment, all of the prawn demons were hovering in midair. The sea breeze blew. Despite the tough exterior shells on the prawn demons' bodies, they disappeared in midair and turned into multicolored bubbles, which slowly floated away with the wind. Lan Ling heaved a long sigh of relief. Yet all of a sudden, she realized that the atmosphere around her had grown strange. She turned around and saw that a few senior brothers and sisters, who had been rushing over to rescue her, had halted a distance away. All of them had weird expressions on their faces. Lan Ling blinked slowly, confused. Clank, a sword belonging to a male disciple in the soul formation realm, landed beside her. He quickly bent down to pick it up. "Junior sister Ling, go ahead, go ahead. We're just passing by, passing by." Translator, Atlas Studios editor. Atlas Studios, Assassin Turtledove's aura is gone. That immortal Du sect disciple in the 9th stage of soul formation has disappeared as well. This is very strange. Deep in the dense forest, in a mysterious valley, several black figures were hidden in the shrubbery. They seemed to be discussing something via voice transmission. One of them scolded. "There's an 80% chance that he took the money, killed the person, and then ran away. HMPH. People like that cannot be trusted. We have to nurture our own subordinates. They will be more reliable. Is the dragon trapping array ready? It has been set up. We can trap the immortal Du Sect's perfected immortal." Very good. Although there have been unexpected changes in the situation, it should not be too big of a problem, the man in charge said in a low voice. "Send a message to 4th Young Master later. Arrange for a wave of people to attack him on purpose. That will lure the immortal Du Sect's perfected immortal over. We will personally capture those 2 disciples and bring them to the trapping array. Then we will trap the perfected immortal. This matter concerns the restoration of our country, and the 6th princess is our best bet. We have to control her. At the same time, 4th Young Master will get what he desires." The black figures chuckled. The man in charge clenched his fist, and then everyone left one by one very quickly. Half a day later, a few men in black clothes suddenly attacked Yuan Qing and Xianxia. Yuan Qing immediately crushed his communication talisman. Jiu, who was sitting cross-legged above Wang Jai and Liu Yanner, immediately jumped. She turned around and charged towards the southeast. Yuan Ling gave all that he could in order to keep up with Jiu. The moment Jiu flew away, more than 10 types of ori appeared below. There were 2 cultivators in the Dao requital realm among them, who knocked Wang Jai and Liu Yanner unconscious and took them away at once. An hour later, Jiu flew back quickly, leaving Yuan Ling hovering over Yuan Qing and Xianxia to keep watch. At that moment, Jiu smelled something out of the ordinary. However, she was traveling too fast. By the time she found Liu Yanner and Wang Jai, she already found herself deep in a certain array. There were white clouds all around her, and even as far as her immortal awareness could reach, she could only see a patch of white. She took Wang Jai and Liu Yanner in her arms and then flew around the trapping array. Jiu was no expert in array formations, to begin with, and soon, she found herself right where she started. "At least, I left the hunky general to watch over Yuan Qing and Xianxia." Jiu heaved a sigh of relief. She wanted to quiet her heart down to look for a way to break out of the array formation. However, once again, she recalled the warning Li Changshou had given her before entering the Chaos Treasure Forest. "Master Jiu, this person has come for unknown reasons and is slightly suspicious. Don't trust him easily. Could this Yuan Ling be?" At that moment, beads of cold sweat appeared on Jiu's forehead. It was all linked in a chain. It looked like she had fallen into their trap right from the beginning. What has happened to Li Changshou? His cultivation level is low. Could he have been killed? There's an 80% chance that these people are after Xianxia and Yuan Qing. I should have realized this sooner. Juju could not help but shout curses. You lousy baddies, if you have what it takes, come and fight 300 rounds with me. How can you still call yourselves cultivators after using these wretched tricks? Yet there were nothing but poisonous insects and a few similarly lost poisonous beasts in the array. There was no response. Aya! Juju tossed the two unconscious people onto the ground and then paced back and forth. The threads in her already tattered short-sleeve top tightened. It threatened to snap at any time under the immense pressure. These array formations and whatnot frustrate me to death. Immortal emancipating herb, this is really hard to find. On the 12th day in the North Continent, Li Changshou emerged from the Chaos Treasure Forest. Then, he headed 800 kilometers towards the northwest. Finally, he arrived at the marked-out region on his map on time. This region measured about 150 kilometers in radius. The terrain was extremely complicated as there were hills, swamps, mountain ranges, and the like. As Li Changshou traveled deeper into the North Continent, the poisonous beasts and insects became even more ferocious. Li Changshou remained extremely cautious throughout. Very carefully, he searched for the poisonous herb that he wanted. After searching for 6 days consecutively, he found all sorts of poisonous herbs and spirit herbs. Yet, he found no trace of the one he had taken the risk of coming to the North Continent for in the first place. At noon, it started raining, and each raindrop falling from the sky was extremely poisonous. Li Changshou did not dare to stay out and wander around. Thus, he found a precipice and dug a hole in it, hiding inside. He released his spiritual awareness to inspect his surroundings. Li Changshou was going to wait for the rain to stop before he continued his search for the herb. In these 6 days, he had searched almost every area in the region. Unfortunately, he had found no trace of the immortal emancipating herb. Immortal emancipating herb, immortal emancipating herb, why are you playing hide-and-seek with me? Why not come out and meet me? Li Changshou yawned and sat cross-legged in his cave. Then, he began to adjust his body back to his peak state. He had learned from an ancient text that this region was where the immortal emancipating herb grew. Coming here would be the lowest price he had to pay for finding this herb. If he did not succeed, Li Changshou decided that he would go back to the town on his way back to try his luck. So what if he had to spend the spirit stones and treasures that he had spent years cheating? Working and saving up. It would all be worth it if he could obtain an immortal emancipating herb. Well, if even that didn't work, Li Changshou would have no other way. He could only start planning again when he returned to the mountain. The rain started all of a sudden, and it showed no signs of stopping anytime soon. It was rare for Li Changshou to get some rest. He slowly relaxed his mind. Although he had the saliva of Red Yang poisonous dragon, and he could prevent poisonous beasts and insects from coming close, he was in a dangerous place after all. It was difficult for him to tell himself to relax. Aunt Master Jew should be fine, right? Li Changshou thought about the cultivator he killed 9 days ago. He took out the soul-conserving pearl, intending to look at the snapshots of memories within. However, the remnant soul inside it was gone. Forget it. This has nothing to do with me anyway. That fellow had a well-thought-out plan. He also had the insider help of the warm Yuan Qing. Given Aunt Master Jiu's intelligence, she probably would easily walk into the trapping array. Aunt Master Jiu had a high cultivation level and an adorable personality, but sometimes she was too rash. Once the alcohol went to her head, she would not be careful. Xianxia was more pitiful. She had cultivated for so long within the immortal sect, yet she still could not avoid the political fights in the world. Her childhood friend, who had always been by her side, was also harboring unfathomable motives. Li Changshou never saw himself as a hero, and he would never try to save the princess. He had no intention of changing his own fate. In his eyes, Xianxia was only well-packaged trouble. He would avoid this karma and being implicated as much as possible. Boom, boom. The sounds of thunder reverberated in the sky. Li Changshou began to inspect his various resources. He had enough pills and talismans, and the saliva of Red Yang poisonous dragon could last him 9 more days. That would be enough for him to leave this area after he completed his search. If he could move faster after the rain and complete his search of this area sooner, he would be able to head north or west to continue searching. Immortal emancipating herb, I am getting very irritated. Boom, the precipice suddenly shook. The way it shook startled Li Changshou. Thus, he quickly used his spiritual senses to survey the surroundings and detected a strange occurrence in the clouds above him. The clouds had formed a whirlpool, and lightning was flashing within. It looked like something was trying to squeeze out. Li Changshou squeezed his fingers together to analyze the situation, and found that huge changes were occurring in heaven and earth. Li Changshou produced a cover with his dharmic powers and burst out of the cave. He quickly landed on the ground, prepared to employ the dragons swimming across Cloud's footwork. Yet, the moment he landed, Li Changshou heard a booming sound from above. A fiery red figure charged out of the whirlpool. At the speed of lightning, the figure dropped onto the ground. The figure landed just 30 feet in front of Li Changshou and was covered in mud. Li Changshou quickly retreated, the 3 paper dolls already in his palm. However, when Li Changshou saw the figure wrapped in a layer of light-red light, he frowned. This was Heaven upset that his search for herbs was going too smoothly. Was that why Heaven was making things more difficult for him? Or had he offended some kind of demon, which controlled his fate so that he could not avoid this disaster? The figure dressed in the fiery red skirt and lying in front of him was no outsider. It was Xianxia. Xianxia was seriously injured. There was an open wound on her left shoulder, so deep that Li Changshou could see her bone. Fresh blood mixed with the poisonous rain and flowed down her jade-like arm. Her right hand clutched her big sword tightly. She seemed to have lost her sword sheath. Her sword was covered in scratches that resembled spider webs. There were at least 10 wounds on her body, and yet she was not in critical danger. Just as Li Changshou recognized her, Xianxia saw a figure in front of her in the rain. She bowed her head and spat out a mouthful of blood. Her eyes were filled with determination as she used her sword to get onto her feet. It was then that she realized the figure in front of her looked familiar. Li Changshou frowned. Just then, he used his spiritual senses to survey the surroundings. No attackers were pursuing her. He recalled what happened earlier. It seemed like Xianxia had activated some kind of treasure to escape. She must have used a cosmic technique to get there. The most frustrating thing was she appeared there, out of all places. Li Changshou had come face to face with his fellow sect member, yet he did not try to rescue her. If Xianxia survived and returned to complain to the sect's elders about him, he would be in deep trouble. Yet Li Changshou did not want to be implicated in this conflict. This matter had nothing to do with him in the first place. Although he would be in deep trouble if Xianxia told on him, the most he would suffer would be a deduction in monthly allowance. Li Changshou mumbled to himself and turned around calmly. Ah, the rain is so heavy. My vision is impaired. I can't see anything. He faced the cliff wall behind him and lifted up his hands, ready to employ the earth escape. If he stayed there any longer, he would be a fool. Quickly! Senior brother Changshou. Xianxia looked at Li Changshou's back through the rain, astonished. She bowed her head and coughed out another mouthful of blood. Then she said anxiously, "Quickly run, don't care about me. Your cultivation level is too low." There are many of them. Before she could finish her sentence, Xianxia's eyelids weighed down. Her aura was in a complete mess, and her wounds were grievous. She and her sword fell back into the mud at the same time. A flash of lightning appeared in the dark clouds, and the rain became even heavier. "Forget it. On account of your good conscience, I will use Earth Escape to help you halfway. After that, I really cannot help you. I can only let Heaven decide your fate." Translator, Atlas Studios editor. Atlas Studios cough, cough, cough. It was just a few coughs, but Xianxia felt pain all over her body. This caused Xianxia to jolt awake from her sleep. "Where am I?" Xianxia sat up cautiously. A hint of red glow appeared in her black eyes, causing the dark cave to become as well lit as if it were exposed to broad daylight. Everything became clear to her. It was natural for cultivators like her, who were in the 4th stage of void return, to be able to see in the dark. There was no need for her to learn special techniques to do so. The first thing she saw was the huge, round boulder at the mouth of the cave. The boulder had probably been dug out from the ground. It looked one with the rest of the cave. The little gap that it left allowed a bit of light through. It must have been nighttime as the light rays looked extremely dim. Xianxia released her spiritual awareness and found that there were several poisonous beasts within kilometers of her. However, apart from her, there were no other humans. "Have I been saved?" Several images surfaced in her heart. Many thieves had surrounded her. Xianxia had been captured after a bitter fight, but while the enemies had been preparing poison, she had found a chance to slip away. That was when she retrieved the life-saving talisman from her master and escaped 500 kilometers away. Xianxia could not choose her destination. It was an extremely risky move, but she had landed in a place where it had been pouring. In the heavy rain, she had seen a senior brother whom she had met only recently. Did he save me? Not far away from her hand, Xianxia saw 2 stacks of talismans and a couple of porcelain bottles. She was shocked. Then Xianxia looked down at her body. Her normally pale, fair face suddenly flushed red. Gently, she bit her delicate, thin lip. What a pity. An extreme beauty like her was looking uncharacteristically shy and bashful. Yet there was no one around to appreciate the view. Li Changshou had already left a long time ago. Xianxia became so shy because the wounds all around her body had already been treated and bandaged. The bandages were the blood-stopping chi-gathering bands distributed to the immortal Du sect's disciples. These were made out of linen, infused with various types of herbs and medicines. Speaking truthfully, the bandaging was done quite perfectly. The insides of the blood-stopping chi-gathering bands were even smeared with spirit ointment used for treating poisoned wounds. Currently, most of her wounds had mostly recovered. It was just that the pain had not yet subsided. However, the wounds in her shoulder and below her left rib were particularly deep. What's more, the bandage went across her chest. This meant that the person had to remove the top part of her dress by sliding it off her shoulders. Xianxia suddenly lifted up her right hand to slap herself across the cheek. With a strong voice, she said, "Senior brother Changshou saved my life. He also dressed my wounds so patiently. How can I doubt my senior brother's character?" Calm and peace were quickly recovered in her gaze. She surveyed herself internally and found that her aura had stabilized. Overall, the wounds in her body were recovering well. It was obvious that someone had adjusted her aura. Xianxia tilted her head to look at the place where she was lying down earlier. There was a neat stack of sheepskin, which had been placed under her head as a pillow. There was also some blood on it, which looked like a line of words. She picked it up to study it closely and found a line of words as well as a simple map. "We are from the same sect. It is not a big deal to help one another out. This place is 1,000 kilometers from the Chaos Treasure Forest. Below is a map. You can make a detour to leave this place. Make survival your priority. There are miasma-repelling talismans, track-concealing talismans, detoxifying pills, and essence-nurturing pills beside you. Junior sister, I'll give you a word of advice. There is no knowing what is in a man's heart. Do not trust others so easily. The road ahead is dangerous. I hope you will take good care of yourself." Written by a man who does not want to leave his name. Xianxia blinked as she reread the last line. There was a deeper meaning hidden within. Suddenly, the words flashed lighter and darker. A few seconds later, they disappeared completely. The good thing was that the map below had not been enchanted in the same way as the words were. The drawings and scale of the map were quite detailed. He had even marked out Xianxia's current location. It was worth mentioning that the path marked out on the map was completely opposite from the path that Li Changshou had taken. "Senior brother Changshou is a considerate and kind man." Xianxia frowned subtly, rolled up the sheepskin, and put it away. A serious expression appeared on her face as she muttered, "There is no use thanking you in words for this big favor. If Xianxia survives this, I will give my all to repay senior brother." Once she finished speaking, she gave a Dao salute to the sheepskin and kept the map. She lowered her head and saw that a miasma-repelling talisman and track-concealing talisman were stuck on her shoulder. At that moment, both of them were still effective. There was no need to change them yet. After packing the pills and talismans, Xianxia began to adjust her aura, so that she was once again at her peak state. Her huge sword was lying in the corner. The spirit glow around it was recovering as well. Slowly, 2 figures appeared in her heart. The one on the left was her so-called childhood friend, Yuan Qing. He had joined the sect at the same time as she did and would appear whenever she needed help. Long ago, Xianxia had realized that the person who had grown up and joined the sect with her was not as simple as he appeared. That was why she had purposely been maintaining a distance all this time. However, she had not expected to find an evil, incorrigible man underneath the kind, warm disguise he had been putting on every single day. What happened over these few days? There is no knowing one man's heart. Senior brother Changshou's words were true indeed. At that thought, Xianxia laughed mirthlessly. All of a sudden, the world seemed like such a cold place. She was infuriated, but also extremely lost. Yet among the two people who appeared in her heart, the one on the right looked quite blurry and faint at first. However, he became clearer as time went by. It was just the side view of someone turning around and a back view that she had a deeper impression of. Before this priming meet, Xianxia had never met senior brother Changshou. When she had found out that a cultivator in the 9th stage of soul formation was going to the North Continent to look for herbs, she had felt shocked. The thing that had left the deepest impression on Xianxia was that this senior brother had a disease that would make him convulse every time he came into contact with women. Wait, senior brother Changshou has an illness like that, and yet he endured the pain of the convulsions and the frothing to treat more than 10 of my wounds. This was a display of utter selflessness and righteousness. In her mind, Xianxia filled in the gaps in her memory with her imagination. In the dark, narrow cave, a certain senior brother was trembling and panting. His limbs were deformed and his expression was twisted with pain, and yet his eyes remained resolute. He extended a helping hand to her. Slap. Xianxia slapped herself once again. Senior brother endured the pain to treat me. How dare I doubt his character earlier? Xianxia, when did you become so despicable? Xianxia bit her lip and gave another Dao salute to the sheepskin map. If I have the opportunity to repay senior brother Changshou in the future, I must not be stingy, and I must not hesitate. As she made this promise out loud, Xianxia's gaze became more resolute. She packed her items and raised her hand to grip the handle of her sword. Xianxia went into a half-kneeling position as her bloodied dress spread out around her. With her left hand, she held up the tip of her sword and made it stand erect in front of her. Her aura began to surge and tremble at once. Survive! Xianxia would expose Yuan Qing and repay senior brother Changshou, the kind and righteous man. She would send a message to His Majesty, her father, and make him beware of these wretched traitors. Xianxia's right hand, which maintained a tight grip around the handle of the sword, began to flash fiery red. 9 spirit-gathering essence, 1,000 mind-strengthening lotus, she shouted in a low voice, and her huge sword emitted beams of fiery red light. Clear patterns appeared overhead, and the scratches on the sword disappeared one by one. Xianxia's long hair danced around as fiery red lotuses appeared around her, lighting up her delicate skin and starry eyes. Immortals are in the north, and men are in the south. The heavens swallow clouds of fire, and the glory of the 4 seas are extraordinary. Fire Lin sword case. Open! There were 3 resounding clanks, resonating with all the swords within 5 kilometers. The boulder at the mouth of the cave exploded, and a fiery red figure shot out of the cave. Tens of flying swords revolved around her. After flying hundreds of feet, Xianxia got rid of the fiery red glow around her body and quickly disappeared into the dense, dark forest. She turned to face the southwest first, and then sped up toward the northeast direction. According to my instincts, I should be heading in the southwest direction. As long as I follow the directions senior brother Changshou left for me, I should be able to avoid those evil thieves. I must survive. Presently, 300 kilometers north of the cave where Xianxia was hidden, Li Changshou was climbing up a cliff, carefully inspecting the miasma-filled cracks. After working for half a day, Li Changshou could only shake his head and leave. This meant that he had not gained anything from this area, which the ancient texts described as a place with immortal emancipating herbs. Li Changshou found a plain and sat down cross-legged. He pulled out a dagger and began to draw a map on the ground of the areas where he had searched. Then he fell into deep thought. He would head north and continue searching for 3 more days. He had expended so much effort, and yet he could not find the immortal emancipating herb. Naturally, he felt indignant. After all, he had spent so much time preparing for this searching trip to the North Continent beforehand. Keep trying! He slapped his knee and stood up, heading towards the north. In the night, he only left shadows behind him. Perhaps due to the heavy rain the day before, gaps had appeared in the miasma chi in this region. Coincidentally, the moonlight shone through the gaps and lit up the path in front of Li Changshou. The cultural hipster in Li Changshou acted up. He found a good spot where he could remain hidden and basked in the moonlight, appreciating the moon. Ah, the moon is so long. Heth, the shape is so white. Ah, the crescent moon is round and big. As the poisonous fog traveled towards him, the rare moonlight disappeared. Older brother, is this getting old? Li Changshou raised his eyebrows and shook his head, laughing. Then he stood up and advanced forward, becoming one with the night. Dao companions and whatnot. Having those would be even scarier than having a junior sister. It would be a nuclear warhead of unstable karma. He could not afford it and dared not think about it. What's more, compared to Li Changshou, an extremely beautiful cultivator in his generation who had a complicated background, Li Changshou felt that he would feel much safer being with a strong female immortal like Ant Master Jiu Jiu. Translator, Atlas Studios editor. Atlas Studios as Li Changshou covered a larger area, the amount of saliva of Red Yang poisonous dragon he had kept reducing. His search had not borne fruit in the area the ancient texts talked about or around the Chaos Treasure Forest. 3 days after he incidentally rescued Li Changshou, Li Changshou still had not found the immortal emancipating herb. However, as he had been venturing deeper into the North Continent, he had found many other useful, poisonous, and spirit herbs. He had even caught 2 precious corpse-burning bugs, which could be refined into corpse calcining powder. This would give Li Changshou a total of 12 ways of dealing with corpses. Even though he was beginning to feel frustrated, Li Changshou never forgot that he was in a dangerous place like the North Continent. This meant that he remained extremely cautious the entire time. Logically, while immortal emancipating herbs were extremely valuable, they were considered quite unconventional herbs. Few people should have been seeking them. The regions that Li Changshou had been searching had the right conditions for immortal emancipating herbs to thrive. Yet, there was not a single seedling in sight. It was all very strange. Li Changshou tried his best to make time between his training in order to read all the classical texts on poisons and herbs. Was all that he read fake? Indeed, master, the old man is very unlucky. Li Changshou could only comfort himself in this manner. He wanted to get rid of the indignance in his heart as he began to think about when he should head back. He had to walk 100 kilometers more towards the west. If he still could not find the herb, Li Changshou would give it a rest. He would go to the town and see if there were any herbs on sale. Of course, there was only a slim chance of that happening. Li Changshou moved his feet quickly, casting shadows underneath his feet. He wanted to complete the last segment of his quest. After searching for 25 kilometers, he found nothing. Li Changshou searched a total of 50 kilometers, through all the areas in which immortal emancipating herbs could possibly grow. Still, he found no trace of them. Surprisingly, he found several precious spirit herbs, which he could use to create soft, immortal dispersers. Look, herbs that would be useful to me are lining up to get into my storage Dharma artifacts. Yet, no matter how hard I try, I cannot find herbs that would be useful to master. This is probably because of the differences in our character and manners. Since I cannot obtain immortal emancipating herbs, I will not be able to create the immortal melting pill. This method will not work then. It's a good thing that I had already prepared Plan 2 and Plan 3. Although these plans will not be as safe as creating immortal melting pills, they will at least be of help to master. Buzz, there was a movement in the heaven and earth spiritual energy. People were fighting somewhere. Li Changshou's spiritual awareness immediately reached out to look for the source of this movement. However, the miasma chi in front of him was too rich. With the poisonous chi moving around, he could only search a maximum radius of 10 kilometers. The fight was happening more than 15 kilometers away. He could vaguely sense several figures moving and twisting around. Was the area where this itinerant cultivator activity was taking place just ahead? There were many cultivators in the North Continent. Normally, they would head 500 kilometers deep into the North Continent in order to look for valuable and mysterious flowers and fruits. They would then trade these flowers and fruits for other resources that would help their own cultivation and training. Assassin Turtledove, who Li Changshou had killed earlier, was one example. He had already been in the Dao requital realm. On days when he had not been doing others' dirty work, he would collect these flowers and fruits and trade them for other resources. Li Changshou immediately thought of retreating. Thus, he stopped moving and hid behind a rock, pondering his next moves very carefully. Li Changshou had read all the ancient texts about this region. Cultivators were fighting on the path that he was supposed to take. If he did not retreat now, when should he? As the saying went, gentlemen should not remain in dangerous places. This journey to the North Continent could only end in regret. All of a sudden, Li Changshou jumped. By chance, his spiritual senses detected 3 ordinary-looking emerald green herbs swaying in the breeze on the cliff's peak, 11.5 kilometers northwest of where he was. They were shaped like orchid grass, but they were much shorter. There were also strange patterns on their leaves. Each herb seemed to be wrapped in a dull glow. Immortal emancipating herbs. They were immortal emancipating herbs, which could poison essence immortals and seriously injure the essence souls of perfected immortals. What's more, from the density of the patterns, Li Changshou could tell that the herb in the center was about 3,000 years old. The other two herbs on either side of it were also more than 1,000 years old. Li Changshou nearly jumped out from behind the rock. However, he immediately recited a heart-cleansing curse silently to calm himself down. He had not gotten the herb yet, and thus could not afford to celebrate too early. Calm down. I can only have a small celebration after I obtain the herb and leave the North Continent. That's not right. Refining the pill would be extremely troublesome as well. At the very least, it would not be too late to rejoice after I get back to the mountain and successfully create the immortal melting pill. Let's begin. Li Changshou employed Earth Escape and headed straight for the immortal emancipating herbs. At the same time, his spiritual awareness spread outwards underground, allowing him to survey the area around the immortal emancipating herbs. Beside the immortal emancipating herbs was a bald, old cypress tree. He could transition from Earth Escape to Wood Escape in order to get close to the immortal emancipating herbs. However, to poisonous beasts, poisonous herbs, which were thousands of years old, would be considered extremely nourishing. There was no way that the herbs would remain unguarded. Indeed, Li Changshou quickly discovered a three-eyed blue wave serpent nearby. This snake was treacherously hiding lower down the cliff. It even knew how to hide its own aura. Its 30-feet-long body camouflaged with the rocks around it, but its blue-green scales glowed mystically. If Li Changshou had not scanned the area, inch by inch, he would not have realized that there was a poisonous beast hiding nearby. There was a huge bulge in the center of the three-eyed blue wave serpent's head. It looked extremely ugly and could easily invoke bold ideas in the minds of humans. Its triangular-shaped head was already beginning to elongate. Its body was also thicker than ordinary serpents. Clearly, this snake was on its path to immortality. The oldest immortal emancipating herb was probably the key to its ascension to immortality. However, at that moment, it was just not poisonous or powerful enough. This will not be easy. Li Changshou also noticed that there were many bones below the cliff. Among them were many human-shaped bones. Li Changshou could not fight using brute force, so he had to use his intelligence. Poisonous beasts like that, which were close to immortality, were considered extremely poisonous, demonic beasts. Although Li Changshou carried poisons with 9 types of effects, which could threaten even ordinary essence immortals, they would prove useless on a beast like that. Based on his own Dharma spells, Li Changshou could fight the beast using brute force. However, the surroundings were too dangerous with instabilities all around. How should I outsmart the serpent? Should I use Wood Escape to get there, pluck the herb and run? Most serpents are extremely nimble. This plan might not work. Li Changshou pondered deeply as he traveled back and forth in the earth swiftly. Soon, his mind ran through 10 different plans. As Li Changshou got closer to the immortal emancipating herbs he yearned for, the battle taking place in the distance also became clearer to his spiritual awareness. When he turned his attention to the battle, his breath caught in his throat, causing him to cough several times underground. He nearly turned around and left right there and then. Why have I bumped into her? Is this Yaoqing Xuanya charmed? She should change her name to Toxic Xianxia. I already drew a map to direct her to the south. What is she doing here? She's a full 1,000 kilometers away from where she is supposed to be. The corners of Li Changshou's mouth twitched several times. He felt like there was a strange lapse in his knowledge. Why is there a suppressive force belonging to immortals among the people chasing her? A spark appeared in Li Changshou's mind. As his spiritual awareness focused on the battle, a brilliant plan to obtain the immortal emancipating herbs surfaced. On further thought, if not for the battle occurring on this path, he would not have noticed the 3 immortal emancipating herbs. What's more, according to his current line of sight, there was a high chance they would not detect him. From this angle, perhaps he should thank Toxic Xianxia. I saved you the last time, and I'm going to make use of you this time. I'll take it that we're even, mumbled Li Changshou under his breath. He paused before employing Earth Escape once again. Li Changshou activated his dharmic powers and used all his strength to control his aura. He silently traveled towards the cliff as fast as he could. Then, He began to observe the people attacking Xianxia. At that moment, flaming swords were revolving around Xianxia. She was floating in midair and moving towards the cliff as well. The swords were revolving around her at top speed, forming a dense shield. However, with a single look, Li Changshou could tell that Xianxia was only strong in appearance but weak in reality. She had not mastered the sword defense Dharma spell yet. Xianxia knew a fixed style of using it, but she did not know how to react according to her circumstances. While she was defending herself, Xianxia could not deal effective counterattacks. 6 people, all dressed in black, were attacking Xianxia just then. 2 of them were in the Tao Requital realm, and 4 were in the Void Return realm. Although they were using all their efforts to attack Xianxia, they were not critically injuring her. Apparently, they wanted to keep her alive. Li Changshou's luck was not bad either. There were 2 other Essence Immortals from this group who were in the Dragon Trapping Array at that moment. A certain perfected immortal in the same array was also powerful enough to keep both Essence Immortals busy. These few fellas would probably not be able to defeat the 3-eyed blue wave serpent. Fortunately, there were 2 more types of aura in the air, belonging to 2 people who had not acted yet. What's more, Li Changshou was quite familiar with them. It was Yuan Ling, the front guard from whatever country Xianxia was from, along with Yuan Qing, a junior brother from his sect, who came from the heaven-breaking peak. Within a 15-kilometer radius, Li Changshou could only sense one immortal, Yuan Ling. He guessed that the suppressive force, which he sensed earlier, belonged to him as well. Li Changshou's mind began to race. Speaking of which, why isn't the big, warm man, Yuan Qing, dealing any blows yet? Is he going to drag this on? Does he really think that there are no other powerful people in the Immortal Du sect? The Immortal Du sect was a medial-class immortal cultivation sect, but it was also widely recognized as one of the 3 schools. Even though several immortals had royal status, the Immortal Du sect would not hold these earthly royalties in high esteem. If Ant Master Jiu Jiu and the 5 disciples did not return to the sect at the designated time, immortals would be sent to the North Continent to search for them. Yuan Qing and his group were courting death by continuing to take their time. There are no 2 ways about it. Isn't this fake? Warm guy coveting after the fake Ice Mountain's body. Pewy, despicable. At that moment, in Li Changshou's eyes, Yuan Ling, the immortal seated in the clouds, and the people that were attacking Xianxia could be labeled as tool number 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Li Changshou focused his spiritual senses on Xianxia and employed the wind speech incantation to speak directly into Xianxia's ear. Take the position that you are facing now as north. Retreat 8 feet towards the southwest. Xianxia, who was using her sword defense to withstand the attacks of the Dharma treasures in front, jumped. Senior Brother Changshou, why is he here? Although she felt slightly suspicious, Xianxia subconsciously followed Li Changshou's directions. She used the support of the flying swords and remained close to the ground as she moved backward. 2 beams of light immediately scratched the side of her sword array formation. They were a short knife and a spike. They flew towards Xianxia at top speed but landed on the ground. Move back some more, 6 feet towards the west. Li Changshou's voice sounded slightly urgent. Xianxia trusted him and followed his directions. 2 more beams of light brushed her sides. Then Li Changshou's hoarse voice sounded in her ear once again. Don't daydream. Use any additional energy you have to counterattack. Control your expression. Don't let them become suspicious. There is a poisonous beast at the bottom of the cliff. Lure them over and make use of the poisonous beast to defeat them. Move 3 feet to the west, then move 5 feet southwest. Xianxia's dark gaze brightened up once again. She pursed her lips and said, yes, in her heart in response. Xianxia dodged left and right swiftly. Very slowly, she covered her poise and calm. In the eyes of her 6 attackers and the 2 observers above, Xianxia suddenly became much more nimble. A breakthrough in battle. Xianxia managed to dodge most of the 6 opponents' attacks. She had only been using her flying swords as a shield earlier, but now she seemed to have realized how to deal counterattacks as well. Just like that, Xianxia became much less stressed. Calmly and methodically, she retreated towards the cliff's bottom, where the 3-eyed blue wave serpent was hidden. At the same time, Li Changshou arrived among the rock strata at the top of the cliff. He was 1,000 feet from the immortal emancipating herbs. The three-eyed blue wave serpent seemed to have realized something was amiss as well. At the bottom of its cliff, it lifted its head to survey its surroundings. There was a plain in front of the immortal emancipating herbs. The strong-looking, black cypress tree was about 160 feet from the edge of the cliff, and the immortal emancipating herbs were located under its shade. Li Changshou found the roots of the black-skinned cypress tree. While among the rock strata, he stopped using earth escape. Then, he fought against the surrounding pressure, gritted his teeth, and employed wood escape instead. He drilled into the roots of the cypress tree, hid his aura, and penetrated upwards. The old cypress tree. Oh. Translator, Atlas Studios editor. Atlas Studios, charge 4 feet towards the south, retreat 6 inches towards the west. The poisonous beast is beginning to move towards its left. Li Changshou remained in the warm and comfortable tree trunk of the old cypress tree as he kept sending voice transmissions to Xianxia. Xianxia was now about 3,000 feet from the old cypress tree. This cliff was a protruding, horizontal structure. At that moment, the three-eyed blue wave serpent was slithering out from the narrow slit in a rock, where it had been hiding. It kept close to the stone wall below the cliff and stuck its head out beside the old cypress tree trunk. It was already alerted by Xianxia and her 6 attackers. However, Yuan Ling, who was still in the sky, still had not noticed it. This saved Li Changshou the hassle of coming up with more plans and schemes. Li Changshou was already working at full capacity. Firstly, he had to actively keep his aura hidden. Secondly, he had to keep guiding Xianxia. Thirdly, he had to keep an eye on the poisonous beast's movements. He could not allow toxic Xianxia to be harmed. The flour had not even been milled. He could not possibly give the donkey up to be barbecued one. She's coming. Xianxia was only 1,000 feet from the old cypress tree now. The three-eyed blue wave serpent was captivated by the few people who were engaged in battle. It stuck close to the rock wall and slowly slithered forward, blocking their path to the immortal emancipating herbs, but not wander too far away. It was an experienced hunter, well-versed in the art of ambush. It remained patient as it waited for Xianxia and her attackers to come closer. At that moment, these people were as good as a meal on a plate for the serpent. Li Changshou could already imagine how horrific and exciting it would be once this 3-feet-long serpent jumped out without warning. This world was just that terrifying, after this. As he chanted the wood escape mantra, Li Changshou wandered freely up and down the trunk of the old cypress tree. Slowly, he dove into one of its stolons. Li Changshou kept sending voice transmissions to Xianxia. Advance 3 feet to the east, retreat 9 feet southwest. The poisonous beast already has its eyes on you. Listen to my directions closely. When I say jump, use all of your energy to burst up into the sky. Do not hesitate. Xianxia muttered a sound of acknowledgement in her heart. She kept waving her hands around, directing the flying swords around her to shuttle back and forth. Her rapidly developing sword defense and her dress fluttering in the wind made her look like an immortal dancing in flames. She looked exceptionally charming and captivating. In the air, Yuan Ling held onto Yuan Qing's shoulder, helping to shield him from the surrounding miasma qi. Yuan Qing kept his eyes on Xianxia underneath him. There was obvious infatuation in his eyes. General Yuan, do not let Xianxia escape this time. Don't worry, 4th young master. We neglected that she had a precious shifting talisman the previous time, answered Yuan Ling in a low voice. She does not have many dharmic powers. Once she gets to the edge of the cliff, I will step out to pressure her further. 4th young master, you can then appear by her side and protect her. If she only has hatred for you, 4th young master, the love parasite will only be half as effective. We have to turn that hatred into positive feelings towards you. Yuan Qing's expression twisted as he nodded and said, Thank you for your hard work, General Yuan. Yuan Ling replied in a low voice, I'm confused about how you did it as well, 4th young master. Even after 60 years, you did not manage to move the 6th princess. If we fail today, or if the love parasite does not work, we will have to kill the 6th princess on the spot. 4th young master, please be prepared. Yuan Qing clenched his fists, his eyes filling with fury. However, he said nothing in response. Underneath him, Xianxia was already nearing the edge of the cliff. She approached the shade of the huge, old cypress tree. Li Changshou was already in the roots of that tree. All of a sudden, his eyes lit up. The words, jump, traveled into Xianxia's ears through Li Changshou's voice transmission. There was an explosion of light as the flying swords rushed under Xianxia's feet, carrying her body up into the air. The beams of light that were directed at her hit the ground one by one. The 6 people, who had been attacking Li Changshou, had no idea about the dangers in front of them. Thus, they charged straight into the shade of the old cypress tree. They did not even think about stopping. All they thought about was charging forward and jumping up to continue their attack. Little did they know that within the tree hid the line between life and death. There was the sound of something cutting through the air. The 3-eyed blue wave serpent, which had been waiting at the edge of the cliff, jumped out without any warning. "Retreat!" Yuan Ling shouted from midair, but the poisonous beast had already clamped its teeth down on the masked man on the far left. The serpent's sharp teeth cut through the flesh as it flung its head violently. The top half of the man's body was torn off at once. From inside the roots of the old cypress tree, Li Changshou considered what his own fate would have been if he had fought the poisonous beast alone. It would not have been easy for him to win. The remaining 5 people tried to retreat at once, but how would the 3-eyed blue wave serpent allow these delicacies to escape? Several shadows shot out of the serpent's tail, causing one of the men to fall down on the ground, thus blocking the other's escape route. The scales on its body opened up, emitting rich, poisonous fog, which engulfed the group of men. "How dare you, wretched beast!" There was a furious howl in the sky. A tall and sturdy figure cut through the clouds and cast his broad axe to the side as he charged towards the 3-eyed blue wave serpent. The 3-eyed blue wave serpent, which had a fleshy horn on the top of its head, immediately felt threatened. Thus, it raised its head to knock away the broad axe. The evil-looking bulge on the top of its head was the hardest part of its body. The sound of metal hitting metal echoed throughout the surroundings. The broad axe had been deflected, while the 3-eyed blue wave serpent's head thrashed around on the ground. A huge gash had appeared in the bulge, and golden blood was gushing out of the wound. The poisonous beast cried out in rage, and its tail leaped up all of a sudden. Yuan Ling had finally landed from the sky. He raised his hand to summon his broad axe back. Once again, he was ready to strike with it. Inside the root of the tree, Li Changshou held 3 paper dolls in his right hand. He hesitated for a couple of seconds before pulling out a 4th one. He paused again and then pulled out a 5th and a 6th. In his left hand, he held his strongest incapacitating agent, his supreme-grade soft immortal disperser. Li Changshou waited for the right time to use his soft immortal disperser. He wanted to be sure that the 3-eyed blue wave serpent was dying before he stepped out. The 3-eyed blue wave serpent would not be affected by poison, but Yuan Ling would. At the same time, Li Changshou did not neglect to expand his spiritual awareness and keep an eye on the area within a 5-kilometer radius. He was looking for any hidden dangers. On the other side, Li Changshou had already acted according to Li Changshou's instructions. She had retreated all the way to the back of the cliff, just like Li Changshou had told her. Without Yuan Ling protecting him, Yuan Qing did not dare to remain among the clouds. Finally, he had to make his move. He charged towards Li Changshou from the sky, his 3-feet-long green sword at the ready. He wanted to stop Li Changshou from leaving. However, Li Changshou had no intention to leave. She directed all of her flying swords towards Yuan Qing, suppressing him at once. Even though Yuan Qing's cultivation level was slightly higher than Li Changshou's, it was extremely difficult for him to defend himself against her attacks. Yet, Li Changshou was very distracted. She was keeping an eye on the battle taking place near the edge of the cliff with her spiritual awareness. She could sense that Li Changshou, who had been sending her voice transmissions the entire time, was there. However, at that moment, she did not know his exact position. As a result, she became increasingly anxious. Little did she know that the entire situation was in the palm of Li Changshou's hands. The 3-eyed blue wave serpent took Yuan Ling, an early-stage essence immortal, as its biggest threat. It had no intention of retreating and continued to guard the immortal emancipating herbs faithfully. Yuan Ling held onto his broad axe and attacked the serpent relentlessly. He was protecting his 3 subordinates, who had been knocked out cold by the serpent's poison. Under these circumstances, Yuan Ling could not show mercy. Both sides had to fight till death. Li Changshou waited patiently and silently inside the root of the old cypress tree. He was waiting for the opportune time to act. As he waited, he prepared his escape route. The entire situation had happened suddenly. He was reacting as the situation developed. Thus, he decided to slightly lower his expectations of himself. As long as he was 80% to 90% confident this time, he would act. It was not realistic to always pursue full confidence. A while into the battle, a few slightly bald branches of the old cypress tree were cut into half. Yuan Ling's broad axe also made several deep gorges in the cliff, causing part of it to collapse. The three-eyed blue wave serpent was not yet immortal as well. Even though it was fighting an early-stage essence immortal, who did not have any particularly amazing Dharma treasures, it soon could not hang on any longer. Poisonous blood was flowing out from multiple wounds around its body. Li Changshou guessed that it would be slaughtered at any moment. "Thank you for your hard work, lunkhead." Li Changshou thanked the serpent in his heart. Then his left hand shook slightly, pouring the colorless supreme-grade soft immortal disperser out from its bottle and wrapping it with his Dharma powers. He carried the soft immortal disperser to the trunk of the tree and then allowed it to seep out towards Yuan Ling. Very quickly, Yuan Ling's movements slowed down and his vision became blurry. "This wretched serpent's poison is so powerful," Yuan Ling cursed in his heart. His eyes widened and became bloodshot as he tried to fight the drowsiness overcoming him. His head felt extremely heavy, and his legs felt extremely light. He let out a furious, guttural cry. Yuan Ling did not dream of fighting continuously anymore. At once, he decided to deal a final, powerful blow. His body flew up into the sky as he released immortal powers to keep the serpent still. His broad axe headed straight for the three-eyed blue wave serpent's neck. The three-eyed blue wave serpent immediately thought of retreating. It started to turn away, but as it did, it looked reluctantly at the immortal emancipating herbs at the edge of the cliff. It was this moment of hesitation that took away its chance to escape. The broad axe, steadied by two muscular arms, landed squarely on its neck. The serpent's head flew up into the sky as its poisonous blood splattered around the ground. Yuan Ling landed on the ground. However, his legs could no longer hold his weight. He stumbled backward and only managed to remain standing with the support of his broad axe. He pulled out a detoxifying pill and slipped it into his mouth, but his movements were already extremely slow. "What kind of poison is this? Why is it so powerful?" "General, we..." There was a weak voice coming from behind him. As Yuan Ling tried to turn around, his legs turned to jelly, causing him to almost fall over. The detoxifying pill was not effective at all. The sky was spinning before his eyes. Just then, he heard something cutting through the sky. A wooden arrow appeared in his peripheral vision and pierced Yuan Ling's neck. The hunk's body swayed as he turned around and looked in the direction of the old cypress tree furiously. There, Li Changshou's body emerged from the tree. He threw out his heaven-changing treasure umbrella and lifted up his bronze crossbow. At the same time, he scattered 3 paper dolls. Pew, pew, pew. Paper dolls turned into clones of Li Changshou and charged towards Yuan Ling. Li Changshou circled around and arrived back at Yuan Ling's side. Rapidly, he pulled out another wooden arrow for his bronze crossbow and readied himself to pull the trigger. The crossbow glowed with a strange light. The speed at which it shot the arrow was extraordinary. Yuan Ling was so heavily poisoned that he could not put up a fight. Once again, the arrow pierced into his neck. His immortal blood rushed out and dyed the ground. The 3 paper dolls rushed towards Yuan Ling and stood on 3 different sides of him, dispersing more green fog from inside their individual porcelain bottles. The green fog seemed to have a life of its own as it wrapped around Yuan Ling. The sturdy man's body emitted buzzing sounds. With the last bit of strength in his body, he raised his head and howled. It was a howl of pure pain. Unfortunately, the heaven-changing treasure umbrella had already set up the array. The area was isolated from the outside world, and so the howl was not heard by anyone. Yuan Ling's immortal body was rotting in the green fog. His white bones were already showing at several parts of his body, and transparent bubbles were appearing in his skin at others. He tried hard to deal counterattacks. His broad axe moved lazily and slowly, allowing the 3 paper dolls to nimbly dodge his swings. Whoop! The 3rd arrow pierced Yuan Ling in his rotting chest, right through the heart. The 3 paper dolls began to conjure hand seals, spewing white flames from their mouths, which consumed Yuan Ling. It was only then that Yuan Ling recognized Li Changshou. Listlessly, he shouted, "It's you!" This essence immortal had just ascended to immortality a while ago. However, at that moment, he was on the brink of death. Immortals were immortals after all. How could they be happy about their lives ending? While in the white flames, Yuan Ling suddenly closed his eyes. Immortal light began to shoot out of his terrifying-looking body, and faint images appeared at the top of his head. His essence soul left his body. Yuan Ling's essence soul shouted, "Die!" It withstood the effects of the soft, immortal disperser and dealt Li Changshou a blow. This blow carried with it the force of Mount Tai, and it felt like there was a flood crashing through the mountains. Li Changshou immediately tried to dodge, but a hand had a death-like grip on his ankle. He looked down and saw that it was one of the masked men that had been heavily poisoned by the poisonous beast. He was suddenly moving. The man was writhing around. Li Changshou did not know how he was withstanding the poison in his body, but while his 3 immortal souls and 7 mortal forms were being destroyed, the man used everything in him to destroy Li Changshou's last chance of survival. Pui! A miscalculation. Li Changshou shook his head slightly, as Yuan Ling's attack finally reached him. The impact caused the upper half of his body to be blown to pieces. Yuan Ling's essence soul laughed mirthlessly. This boy's dharma powers are quite good, but he still has not ascended to immortality. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Once again, the sounds of something cutting through the air could be heard from underneath the cypress tree. 7 spikes shot out, piercing various points on Yuan Ling's essence soul at the same time. Each spike carried complicated restrictions and white flames of the underworld. Yuan Ling's essence soul looked down in shock. The 3 paper dolls around him did not stop spewing flames. Before his essence soul jumped out of his body, his physical body had already been reduced to bones. At that moment, the masked man, whose own soul was burning, looked up to find the lower half of a paper doll dancing in the wind as it combusted into flames. That man had destroyed his last hope of reincarnation in order to bring half of a paper doll down with him. Under the old cypress tree, Li Changshou suddenly appeared. He opened his left palm and faced Yuan Ling's essence soul. Then he lightly clenched his fist. The 7 soul-extinguishing spikes, which he expended a lot of effort refining, suddenly exploded. Li Changshou used his spiritual senses to focus on the rack of immortal bones that could not seem to be completely burnt from inside the roots of the cypress tree. While frowning slightly, he made Paper Doll 5 throw out a soul-conserving pearl. Then he increased the intensity of the flames that Paper Dolls 1, 2, and 3 were spewing. The cold flames of the underworld were not powerful enough on immortals. Li Changshou had to think of another way to obtain the true samadhi flames from the sect. He waited for a while longer before the rack of bones finally collapsed and reduced to a pile of ash on the ground. The 3 paper dolls read their respective sutras. It was only then that Li Changshou finally moved. Li Changshou would only be at peace if he did the ceremonial step of scattering the ashes himself. Translator, Atlas Studios editor. Atlas Studios, how could an immortal be so poor? He only had an axe, a storage dharma treasure. As Li Changshou had expected, cultivators living in the mortal world were idlers in the cultivation industry. As the black ashes rained down, Li Changshou stored the ring-shaped storage dharma treasure and the axe into his storage bag that was marked Heaven Number 4. Then he put away the soul-bewitching pearl, jumped to the edge of the cliff, and squatted down in front of the immortal emancipating herb. Li Changshou took out the 2 jade containers that he had prepared beforehand. He placed 2 detoxifying pills below his tongue and encased his hands in 18 layers of dharma powers. Then, he dug out 2 of the older poisonous herbs with their roots intact very swiftly and carefully and sealed them in the jade containers. Not causing the extinction of medicinal herbs while harvesting them would prevent the loss of one's good fortune. Finally, Li Changshou displayed a faint smile. He stood up quickly and did not dare to stay there for long. He was worried that Yuan Ling had other companions. He rushed to the head of the 3-eyed blue wave serpent, took out a storage bag labeled Earth Number 2, and stored the serpent's head in it. He sealed the storage bag with a talisman and stored it into a storage dharma artifact labeled Black Number 4. Li Changshou should be able to extract a powerful poison from this that his junior sister could use to protect herself. The serpent's body was too big and sturdy to be dissected. He could only give up his plan of taking the serpent's body back with him. The serpent's venom was still boiling around him. The corpses of the masked men were burned to ashes by the 3 attacking paper dolls. As long as it was not an immortal, the cold flames of the underworld could burn almost everything effortlessly. The remaining ashes of those people had mixed with that of their general and were waiting to be blown away by the wind. Afterward, Li Changshou and the 4 paper dolls moved simultaneously to scatter 2 medicinal powder bottles all over the place. The human blood on the ground was ignited instantly. A series of green flames appeared, and the bloodstains on the ground vanished in the blink of an eye. Yeah, purifying the primordial world and protecting North Continent's environment was every human cultivator's obligation. Li Changshou collected a few storage Dharma artifacts. His gaze swept across his surroundings, and his spiritual senses scanned for any signs of trouble in the 5-kilometer radius around him while he started forming a hand seal. After confirming that he did not omit anything, the silhouettes beside him turned back into paper dolls and scurried into Li Changshou's sleeve. Li Changshou closed the umbrella, slipped into the rock strata, and left the place. After the array formation had dissipated, a soft breeze swept across the area as the poisonous miasma chi in the surroundings filled the void. Only a headless serpent carcass was left on the cypress tree, pools of deadly serpent blood, intersecting cracks on the ground, and a cliff about to collapse. The old cypress tree had a change of hairstyle. Its sparse branches swayed in the wind as though it was bidding goodbye to Li Changshou, who was hiding in the ground. Li Changshou utilized the earth escape technique and snuck to the place where his junior martial sister and brother were battling. Toxic Xianxia was fighting against Yuan Qing with the sword that she was controlling. Yuan Qing was struggling to fight back. There were multiple wounds on his body, and his robe was drenched in blood. This Yuan Qing, did he use medicinal pills to reach the Void Return Realm? This is the capability of the second highest ranking disciple amongst all the sect disciples from the same generation. If all the other rascals in the current disciple ranking are similar to him, Ling will be able to reach the top 100 in the immortal sect competition that's a few years from now. If I prepare more medicinal pills and self-made Dharma artifacts for her. Li Changshou snuck near them. He analyzed the tempo that Xianxia executed her moves, stretched a hand out of the ground, and threw a porcelain bottle towards Yuan Qing. That empty porcelain bottle previously contained the transcendent-grade soft immortal disperser. Yuan Qing had already damaged 2 flying swords. He heard the quiet sound of something tearing through the air behind him and waved the sword in his hand behind. His sword blow landed handsomely and precisely on the porcelain bottle and shattered it immediately. Huh! Where did that porcelain bottle come from? Yuan Qing blinked his eyes. He did not even have the time to retract his sword. His body staggered, and he was about lunge forward. At that time, 4 flying swords pierced the air in front of him. Yuan Qing was lunging forward. He seemingly opened his arms and welcomed the flying swords that were coming at him. Xianxia originally did not plan on killing Yuan Qing. Even though she thought that Yuan Qing was despicable and shameless, he was still an inner sect disciple. She needed to bring him back to the sect for their masters to punish him. However, Yuan Qing had abruptly stopped fighting back. As Li Changshou had predicted, Xianxia was unfamiliar with this set of sword kinesis technique, so she was unable to retract her swords in time. Those 4 flying swords pierced through Yuan Qing's neck, forehead, chest, and abdomen immediately. Her move was incredibly precise. The flying swords destroyed her 3 souls and penetrated Yuan Qing's dantian. She had attacked smoothly and cleanly, meaning there was absolutely no chance for him to survive. This! Xianxia was stunned. She suddenly recalled something and heaved a sigh. She landed on the ground, jumped off her flying sword, and walked towards Yuan Qing's corpse. Yuan Qing left in peace. Yuan Qing was indeed peaceful when he died. He had not sensed any impending dangers when he had lost consciousness. Moreover, he could not wake up after the swords pierced his body. Therefore, the corners of his mouth were still lifted. Even if there was only a sniff of soft, immortal disperser left in the bottle, that was still not something that Yuan Qing could handle. Meanwhile, Xianxia saw the smile on Yuan Qing's face. Even though you might be evil at heart, I suppose you still have a tint of remorse in your heart, do you? Were you also pressurized by someone? Xianxia seemed to feel a little pity for him. She shook her head. The flying swords turned around and stuck together, and a blazing fire ignited. The flying swords integrated into one huge sword and hung behind her back. Li Changshou could not resist the urge to give her a thumbs up after hearing her murmurs. Just like her nickname, Junior Sister is toxic. She has an exceptional ability to make herself chicken soup for the soul. Speaking of which, she did not even leave after killing her opponent in this unknown place, but instead stayed to reminisce and be sentimental about the situation. It was apparent that she had not suffered the cruel beating of life. She had strong nerves indeed. At that moment, Xianxia lifted her head and looked at the edge of the cliff. There was nothing there. She could not sense that there was a living person there at all. The terrifying demonic serpent was motionless too. I wonder how senior brother Changshou is doing. I'll bring Yuan Qing's body over and have a look, she thought. Xianxia walked towards Yuan Qing and was about to wrap his body with a layer of Dharma power when she felt her eyelids turn heavy. Her body slowly collapsed on the ground. Clank! The huge sword crashed on the ground as well. Simultaneously, tiny cracks appeared on the ground below Yuan Qing. The porcelain fragments were silently buried into the ground. The cracks quickly extended to the ground below Xianxia. A hand stretched out from the crack and casually grabbed her by the hair. The hand tugged harshly without showing any mercy and dragged the unconscious Xianxia into the ground, which trembled a few times, and the cracks disappeared. The ground returned to its previously flat and sturdy state. The defense abilities of a cultivator's body exceeded that of a mortal tremendously. That included their scalp and hair follicles. It was impossible to make a cultivator that was at the void return realm bald just by tugging at their hair. Li Changshou merely wanted to get that person away as quickly as possible and immediately leave this troublesome place. As for Yuan Qing's corpse, Li Changshou was not the one who had killed him. There was no need for him to scatter his ashes. It was enough that he dealt with the porcelain fragments. The soft, immortal disperser was only an incapacitating agent that would completely disperse 2 days after a person was dead. It was almost undetectable. Moreover, Li Changshou would face a tougher problem if the sex, immortals failed to find Yuan Qing's corpse when they arrived. Under the ground, Li Changshou dragged the unconscious Xianxia with him and headed directly in the southeast direction. They moved like 2 fish in the pond, and they disappeared in no time. Ah! This stupid array formation is simply way too irritating. Accompanied by Juju's angry howl, the ground beneath her feet trembled continuously. The venomous insects and beasts all trembled in fear and horror. Because the big array formation was sealed, the ground beneath perfected immortal Ju remained sturdy and did not collapse. At the corner of the array formation, Wang Jai and Liu Yan'er were sitting together. They seemed to be drained of energy and appeared weary. They had been trapped in that place for a long time, so it was only normal that they were not in their best psychological state. However, this environment also helped to drive their relationship forward. They now called each other senior sister Yan'er and junior brother Jai Jai. On a side note, there were multiple pronunciations and meanings for the word Jai in Wang Jai's name. The pronunciation of his name was not Qi, which stood for strange, but instead Jai, which stood for unlucky and illegitimate. The reason why Juju was so irascible was mostly because of the actions of this Taoist couple. After venting the anger in her heart, Juju hugged her arms, crossed her legs, and levitated 3 feet above the ground. She continued thinking of a solution. Liu Yan'er walked towards her slowly and said gently, "Aunt Master, do not worry too much. Good people are blessed by heaven. Junior brother and junior sister might be waiting for us in the town." Juju snorted and said, "It's been so long that their corpses might have disappeared." "Aunt Master," Liu Yan'er continued trying to convince her. "Martial Aunt, didn't you mention yesterday that there should have been someone from the sect here to help us? Maybe we might be able to escape in no time." "Aya," Juju disheveled her medium-length hair with both her hands. "Who knows if those 3 are dead or alive? If anything has happened to Li Changshou, how am I going to answer to his master? If those 2 precious immortal seedlings are dead, 100 years of wine money will be gone for me." A few black parallel vertical lines appeared on Liu Yan'er's forehead. Although Martial Aunt Ju did not explicitly say that, Liu Yan'er knew that she was still concerned about them. However, she felt that Aunt Master Ju was indeed more concerned about her wine money. All of a sudden, a gentle breeze blew within the big array formation. Then a sigh sounded from all directions. Afterward, a nonchalant and old voice resonated in the array formation. "Little Ju, do you admit your wrongdoings?" Juju could not resist a shiver. Her skinny legs landed on the ground, and she replied, "Ma, Master." Liu Yan'er was also shocked. She asked in surprise, "Did the exalted Wang Qing come and find us personally?" The white fog around them dissipated quickly. The immortal and spiritual senses of the 3 individuals trapped in the array formation were finally released and expanded towards their surroundings without obstructions. At that moment, two silhouettes flew from afar and crashed in front of Jiu. They were two elders with white hair. They were clad in black and had reached the essence immortal realm. They were currently severely wounded and unconscious. There was a palm mark imprinted on both their bodies. Wang Jai shouted anxiously, "Aunt Master Jiu, it's them. They are the ones who attacked senior sister Yanner and me." Jiu knelt down without any hesitation. She touched the ground with her forehead and said dejectedly, "Master, I have been tricked. I lost contact with 3 young disciples. I am willing to accept all reprimands and punishment. Master, please find them quickly to check if they are alive." Just then, the white fog that was surrounding them had dissipated completely. A few silhouettes appeared in the distance. The Taoist priest that was standing at the front was less than 5 feet tall. When he saw Jiu kneeling on the floor, he could not help but to feel a little awkward. He lowered his head, coughed, and asked while smiling, "Our master is not here, it's me, Cough, your handsome and chic, 5th senior brother." "Eh?" There was killing intent. The short Taoist priest shivered as he tried to salvage the situation. The little junior sister that was standing far away and was clad in a linen robe was jumping on her feet. She darted over immediately. She moved like an arrow shot using a divine bow. There were sonic booms as she moved. Translator, Atlas Studios editor. Atlas Studios, the short Taoist priest cupped his swollen cheek and complained, "I was just making a joke to ease the tension in the air. Why are you so aggressive, little Jiu? I have overcome many hardships to raise you up. Anyway, back to business." The Tao name of the short Taoist priest was Jiu Wu. When Jiu had been accepted as a disciple, the exalted Wang Qing had started undergoing secluded cultivation regularly. Jiu Wu was indeed the person who had raised her up. Although they were martial siblings, their relationship was similar to that of a dad and his daughter. They were used to fooling around together. Jiu looked as though she was about to have an outburst. Jiu Wu's eyes circled, and he changed the topic of the conversation immediately. He pointed at the people behind him and threw a series of questions at her. "Their masters are all here. Who are the missing ones? Where did they go missing? How long have you been trapped here?" Jiu's face turned gloomy. She cupped her hands and bowed to those people standing behind. Jiu was at a loss for words momentarily, so she lowered her head and bit her lips. Liu Yanner and Wang Jai looked elated. They flew there from the corner and paid their respects hurriedly to their master, uncle masters, and aunt masters. Many powerful immortals were standing behind Taoist priest Jiu Wu. There was Jiang Jingshan from the heaven-breaking peak. She was a perfected immortal, the master of Xianxia, and was the disciple of the current sect leader of the Immortal Du sect. There was also Lin Qi from the heaven-breaking peak. He was a perfected immortal and the master of Yuan Qing. The immortals from the Du Lin Peak and Little Ling Peak were from the same generation as Jiu. They had found their respective beloved disciples, so there was no need for further explanation about their identities. Jiu's gaze fell on the white-headed old Taoist priest that was standing at the end of the cluster. He was Qi Yuan from the Little Qiang Peak. He was also Li Changshou's master. This old Taoist priest looked haggard. Jiu could not look at him in the eye. She lowered her head and sighed. She knew internally that Li Changshou was a very important disciple to this old Taoist priest. He was hopeful and hesitant about Li Changshou. Jiu said in a low voice, "Senior brother Qi Yuan, the last time I saw Changshou, he was heading towards the north. Yuan Qing and Xianxia headed northwest. They were accompanied by a general from the Xianxia clan. His name is Yuan Ling. If I am not wrong, this is a plan against Xianxia." "Haze." The old Taoist priest Qi Yuan laughed bitterly. He cupped his hands at Jiu, bowed deeply, and said, "Life and death are all destined. It's all part of the priming process outside the sect. I have yet to ascend to become an immortal. It is hard for me to do anything in the North Continent. Please help me search for the whereabouts of my disciple. The Little Qiang Peak will be incredibly grateful for that." Jiu Wu replied anxiously, "People who are from the same family need not be very polite to each other. Rest assured, junior brother Qi Yuan, we will split up to search for the missing disciples. Jiu and I will head north with you." "Ninth junior sister, snap out of your daze, pull yourself together. We'll talk about the punishment only after we find them." These 2 essence immortals were guarding the array formation. When I found them, they were busy mending the array formation. It is apparent that they are 2 of the culprits that plotted against you lot. Both search parties will grill one of them. Let's see if we can get anything from them. Come on, let's go. Jiang Jingshan and Lin Qi completely agreed to the idea without raising any doubts. It was apparent that they were all extremely anxious. As the short priest Jiu Wu waved his sleeve, the two unconscious essence immortals appeared beside him by telekinesis. He threw one of them to Lin Qi. They did not say anything else. At that moment, the most important task at hand was to search and rescue the missing disciples. They agreed to a frequency to transmit letters to one another and designated an area for each group to search. Finally, they decided to split into 3 groups. Wang Jai's master would bring Wang Jai and Liu Yanner to the nearby town to ask around. Liu Yanner's master would head northwest to search with Jiang Jingshan and Lin Qi. Jiu Wu would head north to search with Qi Yuan and Jiu Jiu. These immortals from the Immortal Du sect stepped on the journey in search of their disciples hurriedly. At the same time, a pretty girl who did not wish to be named was hiding in a newly formed cave far north. She started a bonfire and held a bamboo bookroll in her hand as she waited for the arrival of her powerful aides. She was not at all flustered, but was instead a little too comfortable. Yaoqing Xuanya sat cross-legged inside the cave. She closed her eyes and meditated. Every once in a while, she would open her eyes to look at the silhouette that was at the entrance of the cave. She wanted to start a conversation with him, but she could sense that Li Changshou did not want to talk every single time. After killing Yuan Qing, Yaoqing Xuanya had lost her consciousness for 3 days. When she woke up about 12 hours ago, she had found that her wounds were almost healed. The only thing that was hurting was her scalp. "Senior brother Changshu, are we going to wait here?" "Yes," Li Changshou replied casually. "I have left Immortal Du sect's secret markings in many places within a 150-kilometer radius from here. I have also set up an array formation that conceals our tracks outside the cave. This place should be safe for now. According to what you have described, Yuan Qing has other accomplices. We could land in their hands if we head further south." Counting the number of days that have passed, no matter if Aunt Master Jiu Jiu managed to escape or not, the immortals that were sent from the sect to help us would have reached the North Continent already. Li Changshou paused, lifted his head, and looked at Yaoqing Xuanya. "If you are still worried, we can also make a detour and walk for around 1,500 kilometers. However, there is still a chance for us to be caught by them." I'm not worried," Yaoqing Xuanya replied softly. She lifted her head and looked at Li Changshou. Their lines of sight crossed. Yaoqing Xuanya used to think that she was an upright person who would not do anything that hurt her conscience. However, for an unknown reason, she could not look at Li Changshou in the eye. She lowered her head and looked away. She felt that her heart was a little empty. It felt as though there was a cat's paw scratching the walls of her heart. She was a little uneasy and unsure. "The reason should be because senior brother has saved me twice," she thought. Yaoqing Xuanya thought that she should find a way to return the favor, even if she was still currently enjoying the protection by senior brother Li Changshou. "Senior brother, is there anything I can do for you?" she asked meekly. Li Changshou answered casually, "Yes, do not release your spiritual senses for no reason." "Okay," Yaoqing Xuanya replied solemnly. She felt a little dejected internally. She seemed to have become a burden to him. Crack! A crackling sound was heard from the bonfire, and the flames became smaller. Li Changshou took out a gray and dry piece of wood from his sleeve and placed it in the bonfire to make the flames bigger. It was only then that Yaoqing Xuanya noticed there was something peculiar with the flames. Not only was there not a hint of smoke, but the flames also emitted a light fragrance. "Senior brother, is there anything special about this fire?" Li Changshou looked at the bonfire and replied calmly, "This is not an expensive piece of wood. It was obtained from the northern vitality winter pine trees that were grown in the south of the North Sea. This pine wood is not a spiritual root. It was only a normal tree in ancient times. Its characteristic is its ability to grow in the winter. This kind of pine wood had almost become extinct after miasma Qi engulfed the North Continent. However, its quantity managed to multiply eventually. From then on, the northern vitality winter pine trees had a special characteristic. The trees are not afraid of miasma Qi, and the aura that they emit would chase away venomous insects and beasts. This small bonfire ensures that there are no poisonous creatures within 3,000 feet from us. From what I've heard, there are currently huge forests of northern vitality winter pine trees in the mages' colonies. This pine wood is not worth many spirit stones, and not many people use it either." Yaoqing Xuanya was engrossed in his descriptions. Her eyes reflected Li Changshou's side profile. She said softly, "Senior brother, you are really knowledgeable." "The books in the sect have records about this," Li Changshou replied calmly. He lifted the bamboo book in his hand and continued reading it. It appeared that he did not want to continue the conversation. Xianxia pursed her lips as she was in deep thoughts. After a while, "Senior brother, have you found the medicinal herb that you were looking for?" "I am pretty lucky to have found it," Li Changshou smiled. He was in a good mood as he thought about that. Xianxia did not want the conversation to end just like that. She continued asking, "Senior brother, you seem to have prepared a lot for this trip." "Ah," Li Changshou replied without even lifting his head. "I have started preparing for this trip to the North Continent from 15 years ago. I have collated many things day in, day out that could prevent myself from being poisoned." 15 years, Xianxia battered her eyes. "Then, what happened to Yuan Ling and those evil robbers?" Li Changshou replied. "They died when they were fighting the three-eyed blue wave serpent that was about to experience immortal ascension. We were very lucky to have escaped. The serpent's venom is very deadly." "Okay," Xianxia sighed. "Those evil robbers would definitely pay for what they did. Yet I did not expect that karma would strike so early." Li Changshou went along with the direction of the conversation. Tox, cough, junior sister Yaoqin, I have a favor to ask from you." "Please go ahead, senior brother." Xianxia was immediately energized. Her eyes sparkled as she looked intensely at Li Changshou. "I would even sacrifice my life to repay your kindness when you saved me." "The situation's not that complicated," Li Changshou smiled and answered. "This trip has been very bizarre, and we have experienced so many twists and turns in the trip. Our masters and seniors will definitely ask about the details when we return to the sect. I have always been avoiding trouble, and I do not want to attract too much attention. Neither do I want to drag myself into any difficult situations. Therefore, I hope that you can avoid being too detailed about things pertaining to me when you describe the events to your master and seniors. My cultivation level is not very high. The only thing I am confident about is my earth escape technique. I think others might laugh at me because of this." "Senior brother." Xianxia's expression changed. She felt that a spark of lightning raced across her heart. Li Changshou had helped others without thinking about the rewards and avoided the chance to build a reputation for himself. He was wholeheartedly dedicated to pursuing immortality and had been a modest gentleman. A whirlpool of emotions stirred in her heart. Xianxia's eyes were soft as water, but her heart was very sentimental. "Senior brother Changshu is really a gentleman. I can never achieve the level of magnanimity that he possesses." Yuan Qing was also a far cry away from him, she thought. "Xianxia, most of the people you surround yourself with are superficial and arrogant. Therefore, you thought that everyone in the same generation is similar. However, you did not know that there is such a person amongst sect disciples of the same generation. If I can become close friends with senior brother Changshu, this trip will not be wasted." "Rest assured, senior brother," Xianxia assured him. "Xuanya understands what you mean." "I will follow as you say." Li Changshou blinked his eyes. Did that fellow really understand him? He had a strange feeling that her poison was not thoroughly cured. "Forget about it." Li Changshou was not going to leave the little Qiang Peak when he returned. Even if there were troubles caused by this incident, they should subside within months. He could only avoid karma by keeping a low profile. As long as there was nothing abnormal after this trip, his trip to the North Continent could end on a happy note. All of a sudden, Li Changshu's expression changed. The webs of the strong pupil three-headed spiders that he had placed outside the cave had suddenly captured an image. A few silhouettes were speeding in the air from hundreds of kilometers away. The person situated at the outermost of the group was clad in linen robe and had a lean figure. They were flying too fast, such that he could not make out her features. However, from the tightness of the short linen robe and the astonishing curves that could be seen when the wind pressed the robe against her figure, Jiu, "Get ready, they are here." Li Changshou laughed. The weights on his chest could finally be lifted. Translator, Atlas Studios editor, Atlas Studios Changshu, Xuanya. "Changshu, Aya, why did you come to such a dangerous place?" As Li Changshou stood at the cave entrance, he could not resist a smile when he saw the two silhouettes rushing down from the clouds. He did not expect that his master would join the search party. His old master was very emotional. He grabbed the familiar horsetail whisk and looked as though he was about to give Li Changshou a warm beating on his buttocks. Despite so, Li Changshou was still very touched to see his master. Li Changshou did not plan to hide away from the beating in front of the seniors in the sect. He wanted to allow his master to hit him a few times to appease his anger. He would not be hurt by that anyway. Jiu jumped down from the clouds along with Qi Yuan. Jiu had originally wanted to check if Li Changshou was all right. However, she remembered that Qi Yuan was also there. Therefore, she rushed to Xianxia instead. Seeing that his master lifted his horsetail whisk and was about to land a blow, Li Changshou showed a bitter expression. He closed his eyes and was prepared to be hit. However, the horsetail whisk only landed softly on his shoulder. His master did not use much force. Li Changshou heard Qi Yuan chide. "Why did you come to the dangerous North Continent? If Ling did not wake me up, you would be dead by now. I would not even know where I could find your corpse." Li Changshou lowered his head and answered politely. "Master, I have been cultivating quietly in the sect for a long time and wanted to move around. Please forgive me for not informing you before I left." Then his gaze turned to the corner of his eyes. Jiu lifted Xianxia up with a hug and was spinning in circles. She was smiling like a child. Xianxia's cheeks were faintly red. She shouted, "Aunt Master," multiple times, but was still unable to escape from her hug. Their dresses danced in the wind along with their long, black hair. This two-people rotation looked extremely pretty. Objectively speaking, Xianxia had a perfect figure. Her curves were also impeccable. Compared to Xianxia, Aunt Master Jiu was a little short. Her face was also a little round. They had completely opposite styles. Li Changshou stopped looking only after a glance. He listened attentively to his master's never-ending scoldings. The critics that he had just now were merely a habit that he had in his previous life as a gentleman. There were no inherent meanings to that. On the flip side, Li Changshou was more concerned about the actions of the short Taoist priest. Jiu Wu dragged the old Taoist priest that had been knocked unconscious and dropped him in front of them. When he saw that Li Changshou and Xianxia were completely fine, the short Taoist priest secretly shook his wrist. The old Taoist priest that he was carrying using his hand twitched. His aura soon disappeared. If Li Changshou was not wrong, that old Taoist priest's essence spirit was directly shattered by that move. Jiu Wu acted like nothing had happened. He threw the old Taoist priest's corpse into a nearby forest and looked at the reunion scene with a smile. This is a scary person. Killing people was as easy as killing an insect to him. Li Changshou's fingers that were hidden inside his sleeve pinched together as he cast a Dharma spell to predict the identity of that short Taoist priest. News about this priest surfaced in his mind. He categorized the information he knew. Jiu Wu, the fifth senior brother of Aunt Master Jiu. He is a biological disciple of the powerful, exalted Wang Qing in the Immortal Du sect. He had been cultivating in the sect for about 2,000 years. His cultivation has reached the peak of the perfected immortal realm and is a half-step to the heaven immortal realm. He has a childlike personality and likes to fool around with people. However, in reality, he is very intelligent and also a little cunning. He is very loyal to the sect. He often leaves the sect to handle all kinds of matters, and he has many friends both within and outside of the sect. He likes to make wine and refine pills. His weakness is not very obvious. Li Changshou quickly concluded that he did not have to make friends with him deliberately. It was sufficient that he did his part as a disciple of the sect. On the other side, Jiu had finally let Xianxia down. She lifted her head and was grateful that she could probably keep most of her wine money. Xianxia heard Qi Yuan scold Li Changshou. "What were you thinking? What gave you the courage to come here when you are only at the soul formation realm? Were you hindering others?" "Uncle Master Qi Yuan," Xianxia cut him off. She spoke in a serious tone. "Senior brother Changshu did not hinder anyone. It was the complete opposite, actually. He had helped me several times." "That's right. I did not hinder anyone. I have been very helpful." Li Changshou cut Xianxia off. He showed a smug expression on his face, smiled, and said, "Master, I have news for you. I have achieved a breakthrough and have reached the Void Return Realm because of this priming trip." As Li Changshou spoke, he emitted his aura, which indicated that he was at the first stage of the Void Return Realm. His aura was still a little shaky. It appeared as though he had just achieved a breakthrough. Xianxia was a little confused. Why does senior brother seem like a completely different person? He appeared calm and steady earlier, yet he was now a little frivolous. Li Changshou winked at her. Xianxia was a little stunned. She suddenly recalled what Li Changshou had told her earlier. She pursed her lips and did not know what to say. "Changshou, you have achieved a breakthrough." Qi Yuan was very emotional. He sensed Li Changshou's aura carefully, and a smile crept up his face while his eyes lit up. However, before Qi Yuan's smile blossomed completely, his expression turned angry immediately. You have only gained enlightenment and reached the void return realm after 100 years. How dare you be so complacent? Look at Xianxia. She is your junior sister, but she has already reached the 4th stage of the void return realm. Li Changshou smiled awkwardly. He seemed a little upset that his master scolded him. In reality, he was not at all upset internally. He even found it a little funny. It is impressive to have reached the void return realm in 100 years. That is already a superior class talent. Ju Wu smiled at the sides and said, Junior brother Qi Yuan, my second senior brother had only reached the void return realm after 200 years. After that, he experienced a quantum leap after those years of accumulation. Within 20 years, he had survived the tribulation and had become an immortal. Cultivation depends largely on fate. Do not be so hard on your disciple. Oh right, Xianxia, do you know where Yuan Qing is? Yaoqin Xianxia's expression darkened. She took 2 steps backward and knelt on one knee with the large sword on her back. She cupped her hands, lowered her head, and said, Yuan Qing is dead. I killed him. Please punish me, Uncle Master. Ju Wu furrowed his eyebrows and asked, Did you kill him personally? Yes, my 4 swords pierced through his body and shattered his essence soul. Yaoqin Xianxia lowered her head and added, This was entirely my fault. It has nothing to do with senior brother Changshou. He merely helped me to escape and saved my life using the Earth escape technique. I am willing to accept all punishments by the sect. Ju Wu frowned and sank into deep thought. Ju jumped towards Li Changshou. She had originally wanted to poke him using her elbow but decided against that. She did not touch Li Changshou's arm. Hey, what happened? She asked softly. Li Changshou shook his head and remained silent. Ju Wu heard Ju's question and looked over. The short Taoist priest's gaze appeared like 2 sharp arrows that were about to pierce Li Changshou's eyes. Ju Wu asked solemnly, Martial nephew, why aren't you saying anything for Xianxia? I do not know exactly what happened, replied Li Changshou. He looked back at Ju Wu collectedly. You seem really collected, said Ju Wu and sighed. Actually, I had already searched through that essence immortal's spirit and soul on the way here. I know what happened roughly. Yuan Qing had an evil plan of bringing the battle of the mortal world's monarchy into the immortal Du sect. That is an unforgivable crime in itself. However, Martial niece Xianxia, it is a huge offense to kill your fellow sect member. Whatever the reason may be, this is an indisputable crime. Ju scolded him in an annoyed tone. We can simply change this stupid rule. Yuan Qing made the first move, didn't he? Xianxia was only retaliating. Yaoqin Xianxia pursed her lips and remained silent. Seeing that, Li Changshou coughed and said, Uncle Master Ju Wu, why don't we leave this place first? We can first meet up with the other Uncle Masters and Aunt Masters. Junior sister Xianxia can then explain the entire story to everyone. As long as junior sister Xianxia tells the truth, I believe that the sect will understand her actions. The last part of the sentence was actually directed at Yaoqin Xianxia. Yaoqin Xianxia looked at Li Changshou. Her eyes showed how helpless and bitter she was. Li Changshou sighed internally. He displayed a faint smile and gave her a slight nod. He could treat it like he was giving her some encouragement. Ju Wu said, We'll follow your suggestion. Let's first meet up with the others. After he finished his sentence, Ju Wu scratched his head. He was also thinking of a way that could exempt Yaoqin Xianxia from the punishment. However, he recalled that Yuan Qing's master was also there. That gave him a headache. The short Taoist priest produced a white cloud and made them come on board. He also reminded Yaoqin Xianxia to follow behind him closely to look out for her. Li Changshou followed his master closely. They stepped onto the white cloud and sat cross-legged. Qi Yuan was completely different from how drained he previously appeared. He appeared as though he had lost his parents when he had arrived. Now he looked as though everything in life was going smoothly. He was now the master of a disciple who was at the void return realm. Before the white cloud had lifted into the air, Ju Wu seemed to have thought of something. He turned his body to face Li Changshou and asked while smiling, Martial nephew Changshou. I'm here. Ju Wu asked nonchalantly. Why didn't you collect the spider webs of the strong pupil 3-headed spiders? These are incredibly rare items. Li Changshou gave a natural smile and replied, Thank you for the concern. It is hard to collect these back after they were used. I have kept a few nests of strong pupil 3-headed spiders as pets in the little Qiang Peak. If you are interested in these strange things, I can give you a nest when we return to the sect. Jiu Wu raised one of his eyebrows. I shall not decline the offer then. You have great potential, little guy. We should get to know each other more in the future. At your orders, Li Changshou smiled warmly and amiably. He did not say anything else. The more he said, the more mistakes he might make. Jiu Wu seemed to have seen through him a little. However, he asked for a sum of money to make him keep quiet. That meant that Jiu Wu did not want to interfere with the cultivation of the disciples in the sect. However, Qi Yuan furrowed his eyebrows and looked at Li Changshou. His expression was solemn as he said, "How can you be so selfish? If your Uncle Master did not come over to save you, who knows what could have happened to you? How many immortal spider nests do you have? You should keep one nest and give the rest to Uncle Master Jiu Wu." Cough! A breath of air in his dantian gushed upwards. Li Changshou covered his mouth and coughed a few times. He tried to maintain his smile while he bit his molars harshly and said, "Yes, at your order." Jiu Wu was sitting at the front. The situation behind him was hilarious to him. He sat there and laughed out loud. However, he did not say anything. A round face peeked over from beside him. Jiu had shifted behind the old Taoist priest Qi Yuan. She leaned forward from Li Changshou's left-hand side and stared at him. Li Changshou leaned backward instinctively. As he had expected, when he leaned back, his field of vision was much clearer. He could see directly from the collars of the linen robe. Cough! He could effectively guard against Ant Master's sudden pranks. Jiu blinked her eyes. "What are the spider webs that you were talking about? I feel like there is something weird with you and fifth brother." Li Changshou replied, "It's a rare material, I can't really explain it clearly. Why don't you ask Uncle Master Jiu Wu?" "HMPH, you don't want to explain it, fine." Jiu sat with her back straight. Suddenly she seemed to have recalled something. She slapped her knees forcefully and said seriously, "Oh right, senior brother Qi Yuan, fifth senior brother. Look at Changshou's symptoms. Did something go wrong with his cultivation? Is he suffering from some mental demons?" "Mental demons." Qi Yuan, Jiu Wu, and Yaoqing Xuanya looked over at the same time. Jiu lifted her hand and poked Li Changshou's earlobe. Her actions were extremely fluid. She had already lifted her hand when she was talking. There was no time for Li Changshou to react. Li Changshou was engulfed in black lines. His left hand trembled, making the muscles in his entire body shiver as well. His eyes rolled, and white foam appeared in his mouth. He sounded as though he was choking and out of breath. F***CK? Was this Ant Master toxic as well? No, this cloud itself was toxic. Everyone with the word Jiu in their Dao name had something wrong with them.